which farm workers earn, just over 3,500 a month. In fact, the DA policy says that the minimum wage should be 1,800 rand. It's in black and white in the DA's policy. And this in a situation where the workers should be enjoying. They even want to quibble and question the minimum wage. And that is why farm workers sal nooit vir die DA later die jaar stem. They know that the DA believes actually in starvation wages. What other is 1,800 rand? The DA wants actually slave labor. Weer eens, a case of bo blink, maar onderstink. And here in Greyton, Speaker, it is the DA TW Council that wants to sell a prime piece of municipal land to a private school for 100 rand. There is over 200 hectares of land in the broad Greyton area which could be used for integrated human settlements. There's an organization, Greyton Transition. Why not bring, and you ask for suggestions, bring the communities together, find equitable, morally just solutions so that these two communities can work together and share the resources that are there. And there are 200 hectares of municipal land available. It's a perfect site for integrated human settlement, for social services, for community facilities, and it would be a concrete way of reversing apartheid spatial planning. But just like in Tafelberg, where the DA prefers to sell land to private interests as opposed to using it for affordable housing for domestic and general workers in Sea Point. Mense is goed genoeg om in Greyton te werk, maar dit lyk asof die DA wil nie toelaat dat meer mense naby Greyton moet bly nie. Where is the dignity now, Mr. Premier? We must continuously be subjected to the moaning from the DA about budget cuts. We heard 1.6 billion yesterday, but suddenly this provincial government can go on its own and procure vaccines. Yesterday, Premier Winde claimed that South Africa was 40 million vaccines short. But the record shows from Minister Mkhize that our country has secured 9 million vaccines from Johnson & Johnson, 20 million from Pfizer, 12 million from COVAX. That is 41 million. Thus, there are over 40 million vaccines simply awaiting finalization agreements for delivery with manufacturers. The exact number will be published after agreements. Yet the Premier comes here and says, we are short of 40 million vaccines. We look forward to his explanation. Die Premier sê korrupsie sal nie toegelaat word in hierdie provinsie en dat hy self 'n klagte sal lê teen diegene wat van die mense steel. Wel, Speaker, ek hoop die agbare premier weet waar die polisiestasie in Swellendam is. I challenge you to lay a charge against the Swellendam mayor. There is silence from Premier Winde and MEC Bradell about the serious allegations of conflict of interest against this mayor from Swellendam. He failed to declare his interest in a farm when the issue of the utilization for renewable energy project was discussed as it crossed over these particular farms. It is not acceptable that the SIU has not yet concluded its investigation into Swellendam. We never hear MEC Bradell talking about Swellendam and the outstanding SIU investigation. Swellendam is a nest of corruption, cronyism and captures. Weer eens, bo blink terwyl onderstink. Ons moet vra of daar klagtes gelê is, because that's what the Premier promised, teen die direkteur hier in Theewaterskloof munisipaliteit wat 'n PPE tender betrokke was. Hy was skuldig gevind deur die raad, maar geen klagtes is teen hom gelê nie. Die boetie vernekery wat in Buffelsjagsdam projek aangaan. Weer eens is daar geen geleenthede vir klein swart en brein kontrakteurs nie. Die boetie manier hoe die skougronde in Swellendam afgegee word, is 'n verdere voorbeeld. Speaker, the DA doesn't believe in employment equity or broad-based black economic empowerment because they simply want to perpetuate past privilege. As the ANC, we are fully behind President Ramaphosa's efforts to root out corruption wherever it exists. Besides, despite problems, steady progress is being made at the Zondo Commission as well as with the strengthening of the NPA and, more recently, the SIU. There is no turning back on the fight against corruption. While the wheels of justice turn slowly, they are indeed turning. This is happening without fear or favor. But what we have in the province is a bias towards DA-run municipalities who are protected. It is ANC councils who are targeted. In some cases, DA councillors who belong to the wrong faction. So die verkeerde faksie, hulle word geteken. But Premier Winde is leading from the front while ignoring corruption, nepotism, cronyism within DA ranks. It's an election year, so all we get are promises, promises, and more promises. But the ANC also remains committed to working with national and provincial government. And you asked for suggestions, and I want to conclude with a suggestion, Honourable Premier, and that is invite the national minister, the provincial minister. There's a huge opportunity to unlock Tranca.
Order.
Sorry?
Order.
Yes? Is that time?
No, I just called order.
How much time do I have left?
You have about 15 seconds. You're almost done.
Okay. I want to conclude with a proposal. There's 5,000 hectares under the Rural Development Department here, under Tranca. Huge opportunity for agriculture, tourism. I challenge you, Premier, to come here with the National Minister. We'll assist ministers of tourism as well, and actually speak and listen to the community of Genadendal and Greyton and build that prosperity and peace and progress which we know is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Dugmore. While we're just sanitizing the podium, if I can ask that Honourable Minister Madikizela get ready. Actually, he's not here, so he can actually begin straight away while the podium is being sanitized.
Speaker,
Over to you,
I hope
Minister
you can hear
Madikizela.
me this time.
Oh, 1 minute.
Point of order.
1 minute. 1 minute, Honourable Murray.
I asked you a
Honourable Minister
point of order
Madikizela,
right
if you
at the
could just
beginning.
wait a second. Honourable Murray, what's your point of order?
When we started the session, you made reference to the Premier's speech yesterday, which he never delivered. He had a written speech and he put the speech on the table and he said he's not going to use it. I would like to know the status of this speech then. Hansard do not record written papers. Hansard records voice exchanges between members. That's Hansard. Are you saying that this printed speech of Premier Windy, which he never delivered, will form part of the records of Hansard? I would like clarity on that, because then I can stay at home, send my speech here, and have it recorded in Hansard and debated. I would like you to rule on it, please.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray. I heard what you've said, absolutely. The Premier tabled the speech prior to speaking. If you look at Rule 57, funny enough, it actually says that we should not be reading our speeches. So it's absolutely legitimate. The speech has been tabled. You've all received a copy, and we have received it as presiding officers. I trust that is concluded. Thank you. We move over to Minister Madikizela.
Speaker, can I again engage you on this? You're not clear.
Yes.
You say the speech has been tabled. It hasn't been delivered. The Premier himself said he's not going to stick to his speech. He's delivering it now ad lib. What is he said is nowhere to be found in his written speech, which is then the official copy of his speech.
Honourable Murray, the prepared speech has been tabled and any deviations will be captured in the Hansard. You can cross-reference both. Thank you very much. Over to you, Minister Madikizela.
Speaker.
Honourable Minister, 1 minute. I see Honourable Clergeau has his hand up. Honourable Clergeau, what's your point of order?
I strongly believe, Speaker, that what has been raised by Honorable Murray is practically correct. Are we debating the speech that the Premier presented, or we are debating the speech that he spoke on the podium about? So that we would know if there is a difference between what he said on the podium and what he presented to. If we can get clarity, if you are going to say to us that what the Premier was saying yesterday is what was presented to you, then we are fine. We don't have a problem. But we are very much skeptic of debating a speech that might not be on the
point of order.
Please.
Honourable Wenger, I recognise you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. This is fluff. What the Premier presented yesterday and what he tabled are one and the same. They are in substance exactly the same. The same points were raised, the same major announcements. It's one and the same. So this is just a distraction, and I ask kindly that we can continue with the order of the day.
Okay, now before I continue with anybody else, I would just like to make it very clear. In terms of Rule 66.3C. You can't raise a point of order on a point of order I've already addressed. So the matter is now closed. The speech, if you look at it into the wording of the actual tabled speech, is absolutely to the points that the Premier has spoken to. I leave it as such. The matter is closed. We now move on. Honourable Madikizela, I recognize you.
Can I raise a point of
Very
order?
much, Deputy Speaker,
Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Premier, Cabinet
Deputy
colleagues, the Leader of the Opposition,
Deputy Speaker.
members of
Deputy
the
Speaker.
Legislature.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Madikizela, 1 minute. Who is actually raising? Please, honourable members, put your hand up if you are going to raise a point of order on the virtual screen. Can I please ask who's shouting or raising their voices and not actually following proper procedure?
Pardon me.
Honourable Clerho, I'm not recognizing you. The matter is now closed. We are moving on. Thank you very much. Over to you, Honourable Madikizela.
Deputy Speaker, allow me to thank the Premier for delivering an excellent State of the Province address yesterday. He is to be congratulated on his firm, clear stand on many important issues. Taking a stand is exactly what we in this government have to do if the institutions of government is to survive the many attacks on it, which we witness on an almost daily basis. I do not have to remind honorable members that without a functioning, structured government that we have is the chaos that we are already experiencing in other parts of the country and in central government. Deputy Speaker, the more I listen to Member Tamo, the more I appreciate Carl Niaus. No member of the public is allowed to participate in State of the Nation address or the State of the Province address. So Member Tagmo mustn't come here and try to grandstand. As we continue to grapple with COVID-19, I would like to take this opportunity to send my condolences to all those who have succumbed to this deadly virus. I would like to thank our frontline service staff who've been central in fighting this pandemic. The unimaginable trauma and depression that they have suffered during this period does not go unnoticed. And I'm confident that with their dedication and commitment, we will overcome this pandemic.
Deputy Speaker.
But Deputy Speaker, the
Deputy Speaker.
greatest pandemic
Deputy
that
Speaker.
we will not survive.
Honourable
Deputy Speaker.
Madikizela, just take your seat.
Deputy Speaker.
Honourable member, I
Deputy
take
Speaker.
umbrage that you are shouting over the microphone. If you want to raise a point of order, you raise your hand first. You don't raise your voice. Honourable Maran,
right.
is there a new point of order?
No, it's not a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Speaker, yes.
Then I'm not recognizing you. Please row your hand and Honourable Madikizela will proceed. Thank
But
you.
it's a point of procedure, Deputy Speaker.
Speaker,
What is your point of procedure?
Deputy
Honourable
Speaker,
Moran?
the echo that is coming from the House, we can't hear anything that Honourable Madikizela is saying. So that procedure
Okay.
probably would be able to respond to what Honourable Madikizela is saying. So I'm not disturbing the House, but we just want to have.
Yes, and we can't hear.
appreciate
We
you
can't
raising
hear,
that.
Deputy Speaker.
Speaker, that
minute.
was basically my point of order also, because I was not sure whether it's only me. I can't hear a thing. It's like an echo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
All right,
very
if I
bad.
can
So
ask
don't
that
move and try
Honourable
to suppress
Madikizela-
people. We can't hear.
Okay, thank you very much. I hear you. We're just going to suspend for a few minutes. Just if you can just hold on, Honourable Madikizela, while we just check the sound, and we will then ask you to start from the beginning again. If you can just give us a few minutes. Can I get some advice from the IT staff, please? Honourable members, we will proceed. Can I request that firstly you keep your phones away from the microphones? Secondly, that you make sure your microphones are off so that you only hear one sound at a time. I am getting feedback and echo. And thirdly, that perhaps try it with in the chamber with the earphone, that maybe that will not drown it as much as possible. I'm going to try one more time. Over to you, Honourable Madikizela.
South Africans is the ANC government. And that became evident during the President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address last week, which was a clear indication that this man is completely out of touch with reality. Under his leadership, even though Member Takmo is commending him, corruption, unemployment, and poverty have worsened. Nice speeches, summits, commissions, and good intentions will not dig us out of this hole, but courageous leadership that is prepared to do what is unpopular but right is what is going to save our country. And President Ramaphosa, unfortunately, does not have it in him to do so. All our effort under this DA provincial government will come to naught as long as we have the corrupt and incompetent government under the ANC nationally. So I want to caution all those who are still supporting Ramaphosa because they are scared of the alternative should he lose power, which is DD Mabuza. This twisted logic and misplaced loyalty is dangerous and costing us dearly as a country. They must understand that DD is Ramaphosa and Ramaphosa is DD, and they will both always put the ANC above South Africa. The DA government fought tooth and nail and continue to do so all the attempts by the national government to centralize power with an intention to get their hands on tills of a province and municipalities they don't control. We are already seeing this in Matsikama, Cedarburg, Beaufort West, and Central Karoo just few months after taking control of those municipalities. Their coffers are now dry. Joint district approach is one of those attempts where the national government wants to deploy national ministers to municipalities when they can't even run their own departments. Together with the City of Cape Town, we will be challenging administrative adjudication of road traffic offences, or ARTO, and many other legislation that are intended to erode powers of provinces and municipalities by the national government. Deputy Speaker, after destroying almost all their SOEs, how on earth can we trust this government with land reform through this mad idea of expropriation without compensation? How can we trust them to improve our health system through national health insurance? And how can we trust them after they shamelessly looted the PPE and health infrastructure funding to fight this deadly virus? And how can we trust this government that cannot even get the rollout of the vaccine right? Last week, a terrible accident claimed the lives of 4 innocent children. This accident happened because of irresponsible people who dug a hole under the bridge stealing sand, risking the collapse of the bridge and the road. I visited all 4 families to send my deepest condolences. It is really tragic to lose a child, and may God give those families strength to deal with this terrible loss. I asked my department to conduct a full technical investigation into that accident, and outcomes will be shared. And I want to thank the Department of Social Development under Shana Fernandez and the City of Cape Town under Mayor Plato for their intervention. After numerous attempts to curb taxi violence, which have been partly successful, I was very saddened by the passing of 3 taxi operators in 2 incidents of shooting that took place in Delta and Belleville on Tuesday. 3 other operators were injured. I condemn this act of thuggery, which is a huge threat in our efforts to restore dignity in this industry. The investigation is underway, and I'm hopeful that perpetrators will be apprehended. I was also inundated by calls and messages of concern and panic from people after a notice issued by Codeta, which appeared to be a veiled threat against users of other modes of transport. I immediately convened an urgent meeting with the leadership of that organization yesterday, and they agreed to retract the notice. A joint statement will be issued today outlining our position and the importance of operating within the ambit of the law. No one must take the law into their own hands, no matter how aggrieved they might feel. Deputy Speaker, I want to return briefly to my earlier remarks about how important it is to people and communities to have access to a functioning government by referring to two formal opening ceremonies which I attended recently. These, neither facilities which I open falls into the category of major projects, and neither facility is going to have a profound impact on the wider economy. But Deputy Speaker, both facilities are going to improve the day-to-day lives of ordinary communities and make it possible for citizens to access information, government services, schooling, and shopping, all essential to the living of the decent lives. One of these facilities, a former education hostel in Mossel Bay, which had fallen into disrepair, has been renovated and converted into an easily accessible shared services center, housing departments of this government. The gratitude with which the community received this facility was overwhelming. This is a simple, affordable project which will make a huge difference to people's lives. Surely one of these key responsibilities of this government. And these are the kind of projects, Deputy Speaker, that we've been undertaking to make sure that we lessen the burden on the people of this province. I also had the pleasure of opening the second of these facilities on Tuesday this week, the new pedestrian bridge across the N2 at the Gordon High School, which provides safe, easy passage for all wanting to cross this busy highway, but particularly for the many children who live on the western side of the highway. Although the bridge is a straightforward concept, the context is such that putting into place required a government department which could plan, cooperate with another sphere of government and the public school in the execution of this project. That you speak, knowing the difference which these facilities make to lives, and here I include our roads, my department moves swiftly to ensure that all projects which have been closed down because of lockdown were assisted in reopening as quickly as possible so that jobs could be made available, employees could have access to income to feed their families, and that any delays in project times were kept to a minimum. I've moved across the province, interacting with people and companies to make sure that I monitor this progress. I am most impressed by what I have seen, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, over the last 11 months of the pandemic, there's been much talk of change and new normal. And linked to these two terms is inevitably the concept of innovation. Much excellent work has emerged. The Department of Transport and Public Works, tackling increasing challenges in areas well before pandemic arrived, also developed innovative solutions. My department has been investing in technology for a number of years. Through focused efforts and the use of technology, we were able to transform the way provincial traffic works. In the past, it would take a traffic officer up to 40 minutes to complete a vehicle inspection and issue a fine. Now it takes a traffic officer around about 6 minutes. Our technology has improved the way traffic officers work and has led to improvement in both efficiency and effectiveness. The impact of these innovations was seen in the positive improvement in the festive season traffic report, which I released a few weeks ago, where we had a massive decrease in our fatalities. We were, however, pushed further by the very trying circumstances of the pandemic. We have repurposed our technology to enable red dot light service, to transport health workers from hospitals to their neighborhoods in the evenings, and the red dot service transporting people from and to isolation and quarantine facilities. Our system now allows us to identify potential criminals on our roads and enable law enforcement stakeholders to intercept those criminals before crimes are committed. And I've been working very closely with Minister Fritz, and we have apprehended a number of people who were transporting drugs and abalone in our roads. It is this technology that will enable us to launch the Blue Dot service pilot as confirmed by the Premier in his address. Some of the features of this improved transport offering to Western Cape communities include the establishing of new companies representing all 8 regional taxi councils in the province to participate along with approximately 1,300 operators in a real empowerment environment. And when we do this, we put our commuters first. A shifting of the industry's existing economic drivers, which traditionally incentivize fair chasing, competition, recruitment of illegal operators, and route contestation. The Blue Dot taxi system involved several innovative features. Some of these features include participating vehicles. These features include participation of vehicles that will be fitted with a tracker, monitored by us, and will be rewarded for good performance, including good customer service and improved driver behavior. Because we want to make sure that our commuters are transported safely from and to work. Monitoring will also allow more efficient efficient response to instances of speeding, illegal operations, deviation from licensed route, and conflict. Passengers will be empowered with the ability to provide feedback on the service by cell phone, which will influence taxi ratings and rewards. The data from trackers will provide invaluable information which can be used to further improve services and public transport more broadly. Deputy Speaker, this groundbreaking shift in the public transport space, which is a first in South Africa, has the support of the Cabinet as a policy priority and will be funded by the Department of Transport and Public Works. It also has the full support of the industry as experienced in the recent formal letter that I received from Umanyano. And Deputy Speaker, I have this letter here with me, which was written by Umanyano, appreciating the partnership that we have. Just to quote a paragraph on this letter, I am writing on behalf of Umanyano Travel Services to express my gratitude for your continued support of the province's minibus taxi industry and the implementation of the Blue Dot Taxi pilot project. Since you became the MEC of Transport and Public Works, we have noted the energy you bring to the role and your tireless determination to engage, listen, and work with the industry, including your efforts to address conflicts, the provincial industry visits you conducted last year, your leading role in the provincial taxi lekgotla, and the implementation of the road taxis. As a result, we have no doubt of your commitment to the industry and its development as exemplified by the Blue Dot Taxi project, close quote. I will be providing further details in my budget speech, but can confirm, Deputy Speaker, that as the Premier has indicated that the Blue Dot pilot will be launched before the end of the first quarter of this year. And lastly, Deputy Speaker, I want to to inform the members of this House that the efforts for us to restore rail is continuing. We are working very closely with the PRASA board and also the management of PRASA. We had a number of engagements where I've taken a lead in this province, because what we want to do now is put politics aside and differences aside and make sure that we put our commuters first by engaging so that we find solutions, and the solutions are now imminent for us to be able to restore the service. As we have started with Cape Town to Langa, we now want to extend this all the way to Makassar. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognize Honourable Minister Fritz.
Oh, thank you. Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier and Cabinet colleagues, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Honourable members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, the amazing community of Genadendal, special guests, NGOs and community leaders, citizens of the Western Cape. And when I speak about Genadendal, Deputy Speaker, I have fond memories of Genadendal, where we went every Easter on a pilgrimage to just get our souls right into that part of the world, and it was absolutely amazing. I also heard the Honourable Leader of the Opposition mention names of Jonas Bosch and of Victor Wessels. And I must say to him, I think he didn't know them at all, because they hated the ANC. They saw the ANC as big sellouts during the liberation struggle. So I think perhaps he must go and check his history properly again. I'm always amazed with the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that just throw names and, talk about corruption. I always wonder how anyone from the ANC can even dare come and stand here and talk about corruption and still belong to the ANC. They are absolute joke. That's what they are. It has been shown time and again that the ANC is a joke. So don't come and preach to us about corruption. Go and bloody preach to your president and those people about corruption. So this morning, Deputy Speaker, I really want to dedicate this speech to all the people in the province, but I want to especially dedicate the speech to a dear friend of mine who passed away 2 years ago from Genadendal, a person called Roland Jethro. And he later grew up with me in Hanover Park. And it's when I think of Genadendal, I think of Roland Jethro, even up to the last hours of his life. Let me also regard this speech today or this report as a report back, Honorable Deputy Speaker, to Antisari from Atlantis, to Andile from Guguletu, for Mr. Fred Arendse, a report to Mr. Fred Arendse from Mitchell's Plain Rocklands, to Bertha from Belrail, who phoned us every day about the taxi problems in Belrail, and to Antebe from Thornton. This is a report back to them. And so, Deputy Speaker, today I want to highlight how this DA-led government is leading from the front, not talking, not webinars, talking and leading from the front. As Premier Windy highlighted in his State of the Province address yesterday, we are working hard to make province a safer place for all who live in it and leading an example to all other governments and to specifically assist everyone and cooperate with everyone to work together to reduce violence in this province. I want each of you to know that as the Western Cape government, we care deeply and we are concerned about your safety and are taking the lead in making the province safer. So allow me to report back on what exactly we do. Around the alcohol-related harms, as a caring and action-driven government, we are moving forward and fast with the smart interventions of amending the Western Cape Liquor Act. And the areas that we specifically look at is 1, trading hours, 2, the minimum unit pricing model. We're looking specifically at underage drinking and how can we legislate around this. We look at the differentiated liquor licenses to alleviate pressure on small establishments. We want to support small businesses, and they can't pay the same for a license as the big operators. While the stringent lockdown regulations assisted in limiting alcohol-related harms, they cannot be a permanent solution as they have devastating consequences on our economy and promote the illicit sale of alcohol. I look forward to the completion of these amendments this year, but the subject to public participation, Deputy Speaker. Allow me to speak on the issue around law enforcement and our law enforcement advance plan that we have with the city. Deputy Speaker, as of October 2020, our law enforcement advancement plan officers have consistently been deployed to 5 crime hotspots, namely Delft, Nyanga, Kailicha, Bishop Lavis, and Philippi, and on the focus on Hanover Park. Between 1st February and the 7th of February 2021 alone, our LEAP officers conducted 3,560 person searches, 87 house searches, 21 vehicle checkpoints, 11 shebeen closure and 70 follow-up visits, 393 fines and notices issued, and 88 autonomous, integrated, and joint operations with SAPs. In addition, 71 arrests were made for possession and dealing of drugs, possession of dangerous weapons, imitation firearms, and illegal ammunition and domestic violence. This is how our LEAP officers operate. I am proud of the cooperation and the cooperative way the Department of Community Safety, SAPS, in the Western Cape, and the City of Cape Town are working together to ensure the safety of our most vulnerable communities, Deputy Speaker. We are seeing results, and I want to thank the outgoing Commissioner Matakata, whose surname has now changed to Mohabudi. She's just got married. I am pleased also to say that since the deployment of our LEAP officers, many residents have started to feel safer. Neighborhood Watch Chairperson Shireen Hendricks has reported that the deployment in Hanover Park has made morning and afternoon commuters feel safer. Our officers are apprehending those responsible for robberies and returning stolen goods. She said, it is a pleasure to work with LEAP. Going forward, we will be deploying an additional 500 LEAP officers And in this regard, I want to specifically single out in the Philippi Station Commander, Colonel Fredericks, who's absolutely changed the life of Hanover Park and the people and the way they can enjoy the freedom in Hanover Park. Second point I really want to speak about is the area-based teams that we have are starting to deploy. Speaking of the area-based teams approach is integrating law enforcement and violence prevention interventions in 16 communities across the province. This is a revolutionary province. The ANC can just talk about the revolution, they can't do anything about it. We do and carry out revolutionary province. This is really game-changing. An ABT approach brings together key government departments, community police forum, neighborhood watches, faith-based organizations, and many other NGOs, schools, education department, everyone come together in this approach to focus and its efforts on where crime hotspots are. We are taking a business unusual approach to implementing the ABTs and are undergoing a comprehensive realignment to ensure that we utilize our limited resources well. We have not hesitated to seize programs with little impact. We must stop wasting money to tick boxes and have programs that doesn't mean anything to anyone. We have not hesitated, as I said, and where there's no impact, we move forward or towards more productive and result-driven initiatives. And it's so great when we look at some of our programs to see when you speak to young people around safety ambassadors and you see them live it out in our communities. We are creating programs which will go beyond the attendance register and budget requisite forms. You know that everyone just fill in register. That's what our government used to work. I must say, now with this new Premier Alan Windy, we've moved to actually showing what we are doing. Our new relationship with community organizations will be built around mutual relationships, delivery, and impact. Our Safety Ambassador Program. We are in the process of recruiting and selecting 1,000 young people between the ages of 18 and 35 years as violence prevention facilitators. They will be placed at local authorities, schools, and host community across the province. Once all the ABT teams are assembled, safety ambassadors will form part of a holistic intervention which focus on reducing youth violence and murder in their communities. They will also benefit from a comprehensive training program, which will enable them to learn valuable skills and improve their job prospects. They will contribute towards greater levels of community cohesion and resilience by issuing and by being positive role models to other young people. This is what we need in our communities. We are on track to launch the Youth Safety Ambassador Program on 1st April 2021. And as I speak, my department are hard at work because it's putting together and recruiting to get all elements of the program together. I just want to say that we saw the video of youth violence in the waterfront the other day. That's a typical example of our ABTs, our youth ambassadors, following up what and where those youngsters are. And instead of just arresting them, going to them to really go and carry out and get them to intervene into a program that can assist in changing their lives, Deputy Speaker. The Peace Officer Program, we will be rolling out the deployment of peace officers to rural communities, and Minister Meyer would be happy to hear this, ensuring that our initiatives are not simply limited to metros. Everything is in the metro. There are also rural communities in this province. These peace officers will be incorporated into the Safety Ambassador Program and form part of the broader safety approach to communities. Yesterday, Premier Windy announced that to further boost our crime fighting capacity across the Western Cape, 120 peace officers have been recruited and trained from 6 rural municipalities, and that's only the 6. The others have been trained before. So all 34 municipalities will benefit from this. In total, 13 rural municipalities have already been supported with SACWA accredited peace officer training, with 288 peace officers completing the training over the last 3 years. Further training will commence in 3 municipalities from the 22nd February for 60 trainees. By the end of March 2021, 348 rural peace officers will have received training. And by 1st of April 2021, 466 young people will be available to be appointed as peace officers or safety ambassadors from the 24 rural local communities and local municipalities. Rural safety, Minister Meyer's favorite part. As a provincial government, we aim to ensure that the safety of all our residents, including farmers and farm workers, and I want to emphasize farm workers as well. As such, we have created capacity in the department to assist in the implementation of the rural safety plan. Going forward, my department will be meeting, and in fact, it's next week, with the Department of Agriculture and Minister Meyer. And this, we will ensure the rollout of farm watches in rural municipalities. Again, it all fits into our safety plan in the Western Cape. So ask Honorable Kama, I see you not on the program, but please ask, where's the safety plan? It's already in working, my friend. Reducing violence in the Western Cape. Speaker, as I have demonstrated, we are
Honourable Minister, finish off, please.
Anyway, we are implementing a range of programs around the reducing violence, and we are specifically looking at how to halve the homicide rates in this province. And we have seen a decline starting to happen. And I really think we want to say thank you to every law enforcement officer. Thank you to the city. Thank you to the national police, the South African Police Services, and thank you to the Premier for taking the lead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Fritz. I now call on Honourable Klejo. Honourable Klejo, I can't hear you. I see you still on mute. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, let me say, allow this debate and welcome the debate by the Premier and the State of the Province address. But I'm shocked that the Honorable Minister Fritz talks about the revolution. The revolution has got everything to do with the needs of the people, and of which our people need water, they need electricity, they need sanitation in the informal settlements, of which the government of the Democratic Alliance has failed them till this far. But to be positive, the EFF would like to begin by welcoming the arrival and the rolling out of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which began yesterday in the province. We hope the initial program will provide us with the positive results that we seek for the sake of our people in the province and their own well-being. We also hope that more doses of the vaccine will arrive in the country, and as quickly as possible, they will benefit our people. Although this is the beginning of hope, and of which we support the Premier and his government to ensure that our people are saved, we save lives. The Democratic Alliance government in this province must appreciate the manner in which we are embracing and cooperatively governing with them as the EFF in ensuring that we provide the constitutional democracy in our province, instead of wanting to credit everything that has got to do with them. The Democratic Alliance government must act as a partner within the great scheme of things. It must stop competing with the national government, because what we have seen in a number of instances is that the Democratic Alliance government in the Western Cape, it always wants to outshine the national government. Today, we know that the provincial government's efforts to fight COVID-19 pandemic have failed. Why? Because everybody could have foreseen that there will be a second wave. And the second wave will have a number of effects that result in our people being infected. And this has been done through the opening of the economy, recklessly so, because there was no monitoring of the entire situation. So we appeal today to the government of the Democratic Alliance in our province that whenever we talk about the economy, we must calculate that in conjunction with the lives of our people. Unfortunately, the third wave looks to be approaching, and the backward mitigating strategies by the provincial government against the pandemic will not help because they put profiteering more than everything else. This is a very same government that failed to mitigate the spread of the virus in the congested informal settlements within our province. Our people still do not have water. Our people still do not have access to sanitation, which result in the actual spread of the COVID-19. In the areas such as the Danube, the Greater Kosovo, Mfuleni, and Kraaifontein, where our people are staying, that's where this whole thing is being spreaded. And you, as a Democratic Alliance government, you don't seem to worry and have any kind of patience with our people. You don't sympathize with the situation where our people find themselves. In the previous year alone, more than 270,000 people have lost their jobs. The premier of this province stood here yesterday and told everyone that the government will bounce back by creating 37,000 jobs. It is not even a quarter of the 270,000 jobs that were being lost. Having asked for us to open the economy and everything else, but it resulted in our people losing jobs. But what will be gained? It will be very much less than what we are expecting. The DA government has no clue when it comes to the issues of job creation. They have, for a very long time, left the duty in the hands of the private sector. We want you as a government not to depend on the private sector to create jobs. We expect through the department of the Honorable Matigizela, who are speaking here today, that try by all means and create sustainable jobs. The Department of Public Works. We depend on you as government, not you depending on the private sector in order for things to happen. They tend to speak around the economic recovery plan, in the so-called plan, that they promise jobs that will be able to start, they call it the ambassadors. We want to know who are the ambassadors. You know, when you are an ambassador, you are a representative of a certain sector of the society. And we are asking that the Democratic Alliance government must be able to start to understand where we are going with this whole interaction. On the issue of the agriculture, you know, agriculture is a very important sector of the economy that has contributed meaningfully so in South Africa and the Western Cape. How the Western Cape is contributing in ensuring that there is exports that are being done. But still, we have got a very serious situation where farm workers are being exploited. Farm workers are not getting any salary. Farm workers whom, especially those that are seasonal workers, they came to the Western Cape. They got infected of corona. They got transported. You exported corona. I don't know how you sleep at night. The Democratic Alliance government exported corona from the Western Cape to the Eastern Cape. Deliberately so. You arrange transport at night so that those that are affected and infected with corona can be taken to Eastern Cape so that they would go and infect more black people in the Eastern Cape. That's supposed to be shameful of yourselves. When we talk about the rural safety plan, you talk only about the safety of farm owners. You don't care about farm workers who are being intimidated and they are taken on in terms of killings and everything else. We see the war in the taxi theft, where our people are killing each other on a daily basis. And we've got a very strong belief that the Honorable Matigizela, he's one of us. He's coming from Ekas. he can be able to do something to be able to eliminate this killing that is affecting our people. You must be able to up your game. Leadership. We expect you to lead us from the front. When we talk about housing, we expected that the Premier...
Honourable Clerho, your time is up. If you can finish your last sentence.
Yes. When it comes to housing and racism, let's say, as a Democratic Alliance, you have failed dismally to ensure to it that our people have got access to land. And when it comes to racism, you have failed dismally to condemn all acts of racism, including Brackenfell. The report that you have hidden, by all means,
Thank
ensure that it doesn't come.
Thank you very much, Honourable Clerho. I now recognise Honourable Van Voorgel.
Good morning, Deputy Speaker, Premier, Leader of the Official Opposition, honourable members and guests. Speaker, deur u wil ek praat met members, Fritz. Ek wil hê jy moet my hoor en nie luister wat ek sê nie, jy moet hoor, want daar's 'n verskil tussen hoor en luister. Die president deel met die korrupsie op 'n national vlak, sowel as in provinsies. Al wat ons vra is dat hierdie government Western Cape met hulle skelms moet deel. En ons sal aanhou praat oor korrupsie solank daar korrupsie plaasvind. Dan wil ek sê aan die MEC wat 'n minister is volgens die grondwet van die Western Cape, Madikizela, he must be ashamed of himself for blaming people who collected sent for the death of those 4 kids. Having just seen pics of what the hole shows it very deep down, how did people get to dig such a deep hole without being noticed while law enforcement is in that area on a daily basis? Speaker, die maand van Februarie staan sterk in Suid-Afrika op as 'n maand van groot simboliese betekenis wat ons geskiedenis van stryd aanbetref. Nelson Mandela se vrylating op 11 Februarie 1990, na 27 jaar van apartheidsaanhouding, was 'n dramatiese wending in die Suid-Afrikaanse politieke realiteit en lewe. Vandag het ons 'n Suid-Afrika waarin 'n nie rassige, nie seksistiese, vry en demokratiese samelewing nagejaag word. Een tot die voordeel van al ons mense. Dankie ANC, dankie Madiba. Tog is daar diegene wat steeds sukkel om die nuwe Suid-Afrika te aanvaar. Hulle hanker terug na die vleispotte van die apartheid Suid-Afrika. Hulle is die anti-transformasiekragte, die John Steenhuisen en die DEA van vandag. Dankie Madiba, nee dankie DEA. Speaker, vandag bevind ons onsself op 'n plek waar slawe die kooi en die sand kom skuil het wanneer daar op hulle jag gemaak was. Hier vandag is die stryd teen die apartheid, rasisme en onderdrukking gestry, dieplik geval om te bewys dat daar gebreek word met hierdie pynlike verlede. Indien enige iets dit sê, liewer dat daar word steeds jag gemaak op die armste van die armes, op mense van kleur. Waarom sê ek so? Die premier het oor 3 voorkeursake gepraat. Werkskepping, veiligheid, waardigheid vir almal in die Weskaap. Die belangrikheid van hierdie 3 kwessies is buite dispuut. Maar die DEA se drogskyn moet aan die kaak gestel word. Daar is grootskaalse bewyse daar buite dat die DEA nie ingrypend vir hierdie prioriteite uitstaan soos wat die premier hier wil te kenne gee nie. John Steenhuisen sal in elk geval die premier nie toelaat om vir die diepgaande transformasie en vir al die mense te wees nie. Die DEA bly 'n party wat histories bevoorregting bevorder en beskerm. Brackenfell onlangs bewys dit en hier in die Oeverberg is daar genoegsame voorbeelde wat DA verblindery, bedrog en misleiding wat rondloop. Speaker, ons mense word hoofsaaklik aan hulle eie genade oorgelaat. Die DA stel nie in die armste van die armes belang nie. In Genadendal plaaslike ontwikkelingsprojekte word hoofsaaklik deur plaaslike ontwikkelingsorganisasies, kleinskaalse landbouverhouding en oorlewingstuinbou bedryf. Niks met die DA te doen nie. Die DA se bewese liefde is vir kommersiële boere meer as enigiets anders. Die premier weet dit. Die premier praat van nuwe rekordoeste in die Weskaap verlede jaar. Die premier swyg egter oor hoe hierdie groei ons werkers in die landbou gebaat het. Almal weet, die DA veroordeel glad nie die plaasboere wie weier of versuim om hul arbeiders die minimumloon te betaal nie. Skande premier. Die premier swyg oor die onveilige vervoer van plaaswerkers. Hy swyg oor die grootskaalse verbreking van COVID-19 regulasies deur kommersiële boere en hoe hulle werkers vervoer. Hoeveel noodlottige ongelukke moet nog plaasvind, meneer die premier? Hoeveel bruin en swart lewens moet nog deur COVID-19 en padongelukke geëis word? Speaker, u sien die DA en steenhuise en veral sal u nooit toelaat om vir die armes en die mense van kleur te sien nie. Hoeveel swart en bruin lede van die DA was nie al ooit die DA gesmyd, omdat hulle dit gewaag het om te praat oor bruin en swart behoeftes nie. Die wat nog daar is, wens hulle kon anders gelyk het. Vir al die mense nogals, die DA nooit. Feit is, die DA bevorder historiese bevoorregting. 'n premiersrede verander nie hierdie waarheid nie, meneer die premier. Op swart bemagtings verbreek die DA liewer die wet. Waarom swyg oor op hierdie onderwerp? Maar nou ja, om die skande van apartheid om te draai is nie 'n prioriteit vir die DA nie. Hulle hikker na die vleispotte van apartheid. Die DA se standpunt oor verandering en sy agterlike ekonomiese beleid bevestig dat daar geen werklike belangstelling in Genadendal, die ganse oorweg en veral in die armste van die armes is nie. Dit help nie om openbaar geld op hierdie feestelike gollery te kom vermors as daar geen begeerte is om betekenisvolle deelname van ons inwoners te kry nie. Die mense van Genadendal wou praat oor hulle ekonomiese probleme, maar die premier het ongelukkig nie sy weg opgesien vir dit nie. As die ANC het ons wel tyd met die mense spandeer. Ons het met munisipale amptenare, raadslede gepraat. Die premier en sy regering het egter verkies om vakansie te kom hou en dit liewer soos buitelandse toeriste, museum en gedenkwaardighede besoek. Waarom het u die mense nie ingepas nie, premier? U weet waarom arm mense is net nie deel van u plan nie. Hulle is die buiteland vir u, of soos u leier Helen Zille gesê het, refugees. In u party is 'n klomp van hulle refugees, soos Helen Zille gesê het. Hierdie premiersrede is geskryf vir die DA se pelle. Dit is geskryf teen bruin en swart. Dit sê niks vir sout van die aarde. Sukkel en swaar kry mense nie. Skade, meneer die premier. So wat sê ons mense? Hulle sê hulle is moeg vir die DA korrupsie. Hulle is moeg vir DA baadjies vir boeties. Hulle is moeg vir DA kuierontplooiing en DA staatskaping. Hulle is moeg vir DA swak of geen dienslewering nie. Hulle sê wie wis apartheids agterstande uit, meneer die premier. Premier of the ally. The disadvantaged, marginalized, poor and destitute masses in our province demand that you become the premier of all people in the Western Cape. Los vir steenhuis en gee hom sy baadjie en kort broekie terug en trek die sokkies op. Dankie, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Minister Mbombo.
Can you hear me, Speaker?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Ohloniphekileyo utata uNkulunkulu wephondo, somlomo obekekileyo nesekela lakhe, ogxabam amalungu alomnquba, the host, the Gemeen's Cup of Genadendal, the guests in the gallery and media, people of the Western Cape, Dianibulis. Okokuqala, I want to thank the Premier for providing us a campus to navigate in his speech yesterday. Premier outlined the province's plan to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic in a third wave, our vaccination program, as well as our recovery response and plans in the key areas of job safety and dignity and well-being. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, what I want to focus on for this debate, I want to expand on the COVID response, the challenges, and also in what is next. 2020 has been a challenging year for us since that historical day of the 11th March 2020 when the Western Cape recorded its first COVID positive case. Nothing could have prepared us for a bumpy road that we are about to embark on. We became the first province to be extremely affected in the first wave. We have to think, learn, and act fast. We became a health system laboratory in the classroom for COVID-19 from which the rest of the country and the world could learn. The conditions in other countries being so different meant we could not be able to transplant and transpose their experiences directly to our context. We were called names from being a South African, Wuhan, etc., etc. I do want to salute the healthcare workers who had to bear the brunt of making life and death decisions daily at a relentless pace for the better part of this last year. While death is an inevitable part of the core business in health, the sheer scale was overwhelming. The majority of the people, of the healthcare workers, they demonstrated the symptoms of the moral injury, especially in the regard to when they're being affected themselves as being COVID positive, yet they soldiered on daily. Deputy Speaker, 9,593 healthcare workers got infected with COVID and 131 have passed on to this date. This is a tragedy to a scale where we have not witnessed before in any health system in the context of South Africa. Condolences to all those who passed on from this pandemic, including the healthcare workers themselves, and uThixo athuthuzele ezo families abophe loo manxeba aze azibanike ukuphumla noxolo kwabo basishiyileyo. I still remember vividly one of our first case of the COVID death, Unes Petronella Antinelli Benjamin, the first healthcare worker casualty of COVID, followed by Unolfefem Dumata and also Ntombizakuthi Ngidi, to mention just few. I pray for the ones in hospital fighting for their lives currently. I pray for their complete healing, especially among the health colleagues who literally put their lives on line for the people of this province. Deputy Speaker, the agility with which we have responded to this pandemic, despite the conventional bureaucracy, red tapes, and rigidities in government in general, has surprised even ourselves. This agility has ranged from the supply chain management processes to get infrastructure such as field hospital and tents running. The City ICC was just one case where it was customized as a hospital of hope within 30 days. Deputy Speaker, as part of building trust with the people, communications and messaging has been and continues to be a key lever. We are continuously titrating our messages to emerging information and public concerns. We built public trust by having the core markers on a public-facing dashboard that gets updated daily. This has also included the perspectives of being data and evidence-led. However, it doesn't mean journeying with COVID in health system has been smooth. The health system faced challenges where we had to make decisions of robbing Paul to pay Pauline in regard to the collateral damage. Non-COVID safe services such as primary healthcare services as well as elective surgery in acute hospital had to de-escalated to address the increasing need for COVID-19 admissions. While the department intended to address these backlogs after the first wave when I launched Volimpilo campaign, that is the Recover Health and Open Up, the arrival of the second wave with greater intensity and larger magnitude meant that services had to be de-escalated again. These backlogs will have to be addressed going forward. However, the pace and scale will be mitigated by a potential third wave, rising trauma admissions, and the need to prioritize the vaccination program and budget challenges. Noting that the province didn't receive funding from the national except for additional towards HIV grant, even though the president promised us. Taking note, this is the province that received clean audit bill from the AG in quarterly reports of the PPEs, where we never stole any PPE money, whilst the other provinces did so. The de-escalation has also impacted corporate and infrastructure projects that had to be scaled back to enable prioritization of responses to the COVID-19. Prior COVID, we conducted as many soul-turning events to prioritize infrastructure projects that include the Paka Stop Clinic, the Tidorens Clinic and EMS Station, Avon Park Clinic, and Bekweni CDC, among those. The impact on staff, including exhaustion, burnout, grief from all that they have been through, must be factored into what is realistic. While we mourn the huge loss of life, including of our staff and the impact of our staff, we can stand proud that we were not overwhelmed as a health system to the degree that we have seen in some much better resource and developed countries. This is testimony to the strength of the health system. The backbone of the health system is the health workforce. So I do still want to thank them again. Speaker, the road to vaccination starts with a solid rollout, as the Premier has indicated yesterday, and it needs quite a solid vaccination process that gets bought by all stakeholders. It's about sharpening an axe first, prior wasting time chopping the wood with a blunt instrument. Our vaccination plan, which is where we want to vaccinate about 5.1 million people in the Western Cape, starting with a phase 1 of 133,000 healthcare workers, all categories for both public and private, including health science students, complementary medicine, and allied healthcare workers and traditional health practitioners. Our plan shows we have 378 vaccination sites in the public and 41 in the private, also distributed according to the district. We have trained thousands of vaccinators, including myself, who already bought consumables, and we also have registered our healthcare workers on the systems. The lesson learned from other countries with successful vaccination programs demonstrate that the key drivers of vaccination success as we gear for phase 2 and 3 includes high-level leadership and commitment, patient database, so that the appointment system is also factored, citizen engagement to build trust and buy-in, and also monitoring and daily report. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, we are already talking about the phase 2, but it's not a surprise that for us, the reason that we were even ready for yesterday when we did the phase 1 launch is because of the 3 PPs, prior planning and preparation is a core. It's not a surprise that our first South African vaccinee was in the Western Cape. The first citizen in the country, the president, was in the Western Cape, and also the National Health Minister. It just show the relationships that we have built across, not only with the local government, but also with the national government. Yesterday, we received 13,000 of 80,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines, 7,400 for Tiger Bear, 5,760 for Provincial. The hospital research sites among the 17 hospital sites that have been identified by the NDOH, which is these two. Whilst a call was made for qualifying politicians to be included in this first batch, Western Cape plan for this rollout is to apply equitable access principle to prioritize most healthcare workers according to the vulnerability. That's why the issue of the age, the comorbidities, patient-facing versus non-patient-facing, criticality in regard to whether you are working the COVID wards and EC, plus, which is crucial, that we have to have all different categories of the health workers. That's why yesterday, the first 5 people got vaccinated. It was a mixture of starting with Uzoliswa, Godi Gyasi, a nurse, Dr. Sad Larry, a medical specialist, Umvuyo Mpambani from the housekeeping, Umamu Lisa from the admin clerk, Utata Uso Gigi from the Porter Support Services, so that we don't leave anyone behind. As of today, we have vaccinated 75 healthcare workers from yesterday. That is the Provincial Hospital, 40 Tigerberg 12, and Khayelitsha District Hospital 23. In conclusion, Speaker, I want to take this moment and thank our head of health, Dr. Klute, and the management team. He took over the baton from the Dr. Engelbrecht when South Africa was just hit hard by the pandemic. During my budget speech, I want to convey probably my appreciation to all senior staff who has already retired. Speaker, the reason that I was rushing is because I wanted also to make some comments to what my colleagues have already indicated. For example, Member Doug Moore spoke about the number of the doses. Just to confirm, Member Doug Moore was reading from the national wish list. As of South Africa today, there is no vaccine that has been approved. The only one that has been that we are using now, J&J, it got emergency approval under the clinical trial phase 3B in order to vaccinate 500,000 healthcare workers. For the doses. So currently, the first batch of the 80,000 that have been distributed throughout the country, it still is a shortfall because, for example, for us in the Western Cape, for our phase 1 healthcare workers, we need 133,000, the number of those. So it's part of the clinical trials. So that's why you cannot vaccinate anyone other than a healthcare worker unless there's a deviation of the approval. So these 9 million, 12 million, they are still not approved yet because it still have to undergo a different process because it will be used for the commercialization. From Member Tlago Nonde, related to who's infecting who, we need to be very careful of coming up with those kind of these political sentiments. In the UK, in the US, Europe, in Belgium, Italy, Spain, and all of those, these are the countries that have got better economic system and better health system, but the way they've been hit hardest by the virus themselves. So you cannot make those, like in the Britain, where UK has been keep on having these lockdowns. But my point, it's about, you mustn't create things that are not beyond, that are not scientific in regard to explaining what is happening with the pandemic. For example, for the second wave, can we argue and say that just because it started in Nelson Mandela and then went to the BCM, which is the Buffalo City, and then to Sarah Batman, and then to Garden Route, are we going to say at the time that it was only the Nelson Mandela that was closed, and then now it ended up to Garden Route and then coming to the city? Are we going to make an argument and say that no, there's a second variant, which actually is a major killer, in regard to the severe illnesses and all of those? Are we going to say that Eastern Cape infected us? No, we cannot say those things. So that's why we need everyone to cooperate. Same applies with the issue of even among the House, where people end up having these political meetings and all of those, yet it's not even not part of the regulations, but becoming potential super spreader. So we need every one of you, because when there's a high level of community infections, it means that it will have an impact on our healthcare workers. It means that it will already impact on the already delicate health system. So that's why we need each other to help one another. So thank you very much, Speaker. Indeed, we fought when others couldn't anymore. That's why for us, we don't want to leave no Anti-SARA behind when it comes to fighting the COVID. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, yesterday's SOPA was probably the most anticipated and important provincial government statement we can expect in our lifetimes. None of us have lived through quite what we've lived through over the last 12 months. None of us could have imagined this nor prepared for it. The magnitude of the human, social, psychological, and financial devastation is unprecedented. The Premier prepared a SOPA that told us it was 2 hours long and we can read it on WhatsApp. At a time when the circumstances and the universal anxiety required assuring and serious provincial leadership, our Premier told us that none of us would probably be interested in listening to his long speech. The frivolity was unfortunate and ill-timed. It is consistent with the kind of remarks that the Premier has made throughout the pandemic, which have undermined the COVID-19 regulations. Those who defy the regulations have consistently set us back into lockdowns and hardship. They should not have the cover, implied or explicit, from the Premier of this province. Our number one priority right now is to manage this pandemic so that we can recover our lives. The world has moved from managing this contagion through isolation to preventing contagion through the vaccine. The Premier recently announced that the Western Cape would go it alone and procure its own vaccine. He takes issue with those who question this, but he fails to grasp the nature of the questions.
The question is not whether the Western Cape is constitutionally entitled to purchase the vaccine. The questions are, how will this happen when there is a global shortage, and what will the impact be on the national program? He says that the centralized vaccine program has not secured enough vaccines for the country. Is the Premier saying that this is due to a lack of trying, or does he acknowledge the global scramble for this vaccine and thus the shortage? If he's saying that there is insufficient supply because the central procurement system started too late, then what does he say about his own government only now making calls to manufacturers several months later than the central procurement system? The trouble is that the Premier made a bold, politically opportunistic announcement, but is unable to back it up with a plan or with facts. The idea of officials calling around looking for vaccines is embarrassing. It's like a scene straight out of the old radio show, Men from the Ministry, or Norma Asseblief. Yesterday was the time to put some details to this promise. I mean, the DA is going to the High Court to compel the national government to release a detailed plan. But do tell us your plan is phoning around looking for vaccines. The Premier needed to spend a lot more time detailing to our residents how the province will secure additional vaccines and how these will be rolled out. In October 2020, we welcomed the Premier's promise of investment in infrastructure. There's good precedent for the role that infrastructure development can play in resuscitating an economy and creating large numbers of jobs. The creation of an infrastructure agency was bold and ambitious, and we would get right behind it. But the Premier failed to address the progress of this agency in any real detail, and its passing mention raises questions as to whether this isn't another of this government's grand-sounding announcements without the substance. The prospect of a major public investment in infrastructure, supported by the private sector, is a massive intervention, and it deserved a lot more attention than a passing mention. What we needed to hear was how the agency will work, what infrastructure will be built and prioritized, and a real plan that the people of this province and businesses in the construction sector can rely on. We welcome the Premier's call for the establishment of a single transport authority for the Greater Cape Town area. It is a little laughable given that we established a transport authority in 2012 and attempted to secure it from changes in government, which we thought would be from one party to the other maybe, with a transport authority bylaw. How ironic that in December 2018, Mayor Dan Plato rescinded that bylaw and destroyed the transport authority, together with all the work that had been done to ensure that we created a reliable, efficient, multimodal transport network under one authority. Nevertheless, we welcome the about turn. This is really a local government mandate, but we hope the Premier will persuade the Mayor to revisit the bylaw. The work has been done. You do not need to do the feasibility study or the business case that you set out in the SOPA document. The delivery of free and affordable housing is in crisis. For as long as this government rolls out the National Housing Program as a take-what-you-can-get recipient of national grant funding, you will never solve the crisis. You are limited by conditional grant funding only because you choose not to prioritize housing. If you want to be a government of innovation, be innovative where it counts, where it will make an impact on the lives of the homeless. In housing, you will have to leverage public land and buildings and forge partnerships with private companies and civil society. You will not make progress if you plan to go to war with those you disagree with. The Premier wants to lead from the front, but failed to detail how the province can lead from the front when it comes to housing and find a way to increase delivery despite national funding cuts. The delivery of inner-city affordable housing remains zero, and yesterday we heard no real commitment or plan to remedy that. The announcement of 13,000 housing opportunities in CBDs is reminiscent of the promise of 10,000 inner-city affordable housing opportunities promised for Cape Town 2 years ago. While the Premier spoke of 13,000 housing opportunities in CBDs, his actual SOPA document said the 13,000 opportunities were linked to 130 hectares of land that had been acquired. Again, the lack of a detailed plan shared with the people of this province creates ambiguous promises. This time next year, we'll be wondering what happened to the 13,000 housing opportunities and the 10,000 housing opportunities from 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Minister Mayor.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier, Honourable Members of the Provincial Cabinet, the Honourable Leaders of the Official Opposition, Honourable Members of the Provincial Legislature, special guests, the media, and members of the public. Ik groet die inwoners van Genadendal in die Overberg. Yesterday, the Premier was leading from the front during the State of the Province address. Deputy Speaker, there's a vehicle. They restart the clock.
1 minute, Honourable Minister. If we can just sort that out, 1 second. Okay. You may begin. We will begin from zero. Over to you.
Honourable Premier, Honourable Speaker and Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Members of the Provincial Cabinet, Honourable Members, Leaders of the Official Opposition, Honourable Members of the Provincial Legislature, special guests, the media and members of the public. Ek groet die inwoners van Genadendal en al die inwoners in die Overbergstreek. Honourable Deputy Speaker, yesterday the Premier was leading from the front. During his State of the Province address, Genadendal was the perfect place to deliver the State of the Province address because it reminded us of the values of the former President Nelson Mandela. Going to Genadendal was a journey back to values that is appreciated by our people. The Western Cape government, Honourable Deputy Speaker, has 6 core values, which are rooted in the system of governance in the Western Cape. The first value is caring. A global pandemic of this nature requires a caring government, a caring culture, and a caring mindset. Nothing is more important than showing it in deed and in word that you are caring. It is this caring culture that we saw multiplied in communities, in the rural areas, and here in the Cape Metro, but led also by civil society, the religious organizations, community-based organizations, businesses and farmers and farm workers during COVID-19 pandemic. It was this caring culture of our healthcare workers that turned values into action in this province. Honourable Deputy Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience a caring government? Clearly not. Not judging from the recent actions of National Minister of Social Development as he addressed SASSA grant applicants in Bellville from the comfort of a police Casper and then helplessly looked on as police unleashed water cannons on the most vulnerable in society, those applying for disability grants. A Minister of Social Development must have, like the Western Cape Minister of Social Development, Sarna Fernandez, a soul for the poor, unlike Lindiwe Susulu, an uncaring woman. The second value is competence. Nowhere in South Africa was this value more explicitly seen in action than here in the Western Cape. It is fair to say that we have seen how competence embodied by Dr. Keith Kluter, his health team, our clinical team, our doctors, our nurses, are bearing fruit in our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. They have displayed absolute competence. It is also fair to say that our government is the only one in South Africa that appoints people that are appointed that are fit for purpose. The Premier, as the executive authority of this Western Cape government, is leading from the front by appointing heads of departments that are fit for purpose here in this government. Honourable Deputy Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience a competent government? Clearly not. if one considers the testimonies of witnesses appearing in front of the Zondo Commission. President Cyril Ramaphosa was the chairperson of the ANC Cadre Deployment Committee. He is responsible for those crazy appointments at all the state-owned entities. He's responsible for the appointment of Dudu Meheni and Brian Molefe and many other ANC cronies. Accountability is not reduced to mere numbers and cases, but an analysis of the post-text, the narratives, and human reflections involved. Honorable Speaker, do we, outside the Western Cape, experience an accountable government? Clearly not, if one considers the testimony of the DA Chief Whip in the National Assembly, Natasha Mazzoni, at the Zondo Commission. She gave a detailed account of how the ANC MPs shielded ministers from accountability and protect them in the National Assembly. The State Capture Commission has heard from several witnesses that parliamentary oversight was severely compromised by the organized criminal syndicate, the African National Congress. The Zondo Commission heard of an unwillingness by the ANC MPs to hold its members of parliament and ministers to account. And today, we are sitting with the chief looter of the State Capture Party, defying even the Constitution's court ruling that he must account for his actions and appear before the Zondo Commission. And all our dear president can say, and I quote, please give Mr. Zuma space to think about the Constitution. He was the president of South Africa for 9 years, and the president says, give him space to think. The fourth value of this government is integrity. Integrity, also known as moral uprightness and strong adherence to honesty in public as well as in private lives, do matter. Honorable Deputy Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience a government that has integrity? Clearly not. The State Capture Party has thus far displayed no true desire to implement its own resolutions to step aside when you are corrupt. Zuma has an ace up his sleeve. We know that people generally have low levels of trust in government. Our strategic communication unit in the Department of the Premier does regular polling to test the trust levels of our citizens in how the Western Cape government performs in managing this pandemic. Although having high levels of fear and mixed feelings during different stages and periods of this pandemic, the citizens of the Western Cape now have higher levels of trust in how the Western Cape government and our health department is performing. This is because our Premier Windy is leading from the front. Even the national government has trust in the Western Cape, so much so that the President took his vaccine injection yesterday right here in the best-run province in South Africa. Honorable Deputy Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience a government that they can trust? Clearly not. There is no trust in the state capture government of Ramaphosa. We therefore call on President Ramaphosa and his national government to resign. If you have no trust, you have no legitimacy. Resign with dignity, Mr. President. This is a call from us to my fellow South Africans. Do the honorable thing and resign. The fifth value is innovation. Leading in turbulent times require innovation and speed. We have seen much innovation in the Western Cape as outlined by the Premier during his State of the Province address yesterday and as explained by the Minister of Transport and Public Works as well as amplified by the Minister of Health. We have seen these innovations making a difference. The Health Department has together with the Department of the Premier developed an online real-time COVID-19 dashboard. This is a groundbreaking innovation that has received international recognition. High-flow nasal oxygen as a substitute for ventilators is also an innovation that is saving lives in the Western Cape. Honourable Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience innovations in their provincial governments? The ANC provincial government in the Eastern Cape produced and procured ambulance scooters to transport patients in rural areas. What a waste of taxpayers' money. Even Health Minister Dr. Mkhize described the ambulance scooters as being an inappropriate tool in the fight against COVID-19. The ANC is always finding innovative ways to line their own pockets and to steal taxpayers' money. That's where the innovation of the ANC goes, in stealing taxpayers' money. The last value of this government is responsiveness. Nowhere during my adult working life have I seen this level of responsiveness from a premier, a health minister, head of department, doctors, nurses, and health staff. Leave was cancelled, long working hours, weekends across functional and geographical boundaries is all testimonies of the levels and depth of responsiveness. Honourable Speaker, do we, the people outside the Western Cape, experience responsiveness in government? Clearly not. No, we rather see provincial governments looting COVID-19 money, and when confronted, the president simply says, I am shocked. While the president is shocked, Premier Windy is leading from the front by being the only premier whose government has published 2 disclosure reports on the spending of COVID-19 here in the Western Cape. Honourable Speaker, do people outside the Western Cape experience value-based leadership in their provincial governments? The answer is no. Honourable Speaker, values help us to navigate in turbulent times. The Democratic Alliance government of the Western Cape, and wherever it governs, offers the voter value-based leadership, data-led governance, evidence-based decision-making, integration of faith, reason, and emotion, and people leading with empathy and compassion, servant leadership, and a caring government. The voters of the Western Cape have a clear choice in the upcoming local government election, and that is to vote for a value-based, caring government with integrity. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is time for South Africa to exit the party of toxic leadership. It is time for South Africa to exit the party of unethical leadership. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is time to facilitate the exit of the state capture party from South Africa. The people of the Western Cape have already issued the ANC a one-way ticket to oblivion for them to never return to govern here in the Western Cape. I call now on voters in South Africa to do exactly the same. Use the local government election 2021 to send the ANC criminal syndicate out of your streets, your towns, your municipalities, your districts and regions all over South Africa. Let them never return to your town to steal. Never return to your town, your district to steal. Never return to your region to steal. South Africa, now is the time to clean this country and experience real hope, real change now in 2021. To free the country, we must vote the ANC out all over South Africa and get the new government in the union buildings. The ANC brought down South African Airways at a great cost to the taxpayer. South Africa Airways lies scattered across the runway of corruption across the country.
Minister.
Let me conclude. The black box is safely with the Zondo Commission, and each day another bit of the puzzle of state capture is revealed. The time for change is now. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honourable Palmer. Honourable Palmer, what is your point of order?
Deputy Speaker, firstly, I have to register that I've been raising my hand and you are not recognizing me, and I do not want to disrupt the MEC. And now that he has finished, because I wanted to raise a point of order on Rule 44 that speaks on irrelevance and repetition, because we are called here today to debate the state of the province address, and the MEC finds himself canvassing for local government elections. So I thought that as a speaker, in accordance with that rule, we would intervene and redirect the conduct of the member. But I must say, Speaker, that you must please look at our hands as you have advised us that we must raise hands when we want to raise point of orders. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Kama. Apologies. I also rely on the table staff. It seems none of us saw that. But what I do want to say is that I'd like to remind you that today is a political debate and politics is part of the speech. So the Honourable Minister Mayor has not violated Rule 44 in any way. It's actually in line with what the debate is about. Thank you very much. I now move over to Honourable Smith.
Geachte Speaker, geachte lede, dames en heren, die mensen van Genadendal, Theewaterskloof en die Oeverberg. Ek kon gister nie glo dat 'n derde vlug vanaf Kaapstad na New York vir die Wes-Kaapse regering belangriker is as die behoeftes van die mense nie. Die Wes-Kaap brand van armoede. Daar is baie krisisse wat ons kan uitwys en ek glo ons sal nog 'n geleentheid kry om dit te doen. Maar vandag wil ek die eerste gedeelte van my toespraak toewy aan die mense van Kaap-Agulhas, want die parlement is nou hier. In hierdie plaaslike verkiesingsjaar stem ons saam met die agbare Dakmo om te sê dat die toespraak van die premier meer oor die verkiesing is as oor die status van die provinsie, veral na COVID-19. 'n Mens sou gedink het dat hierdie provinsiale regering die mense en die ekonomie van die Wes-Kaap sou eerste stel. Maar ons moet weer eens luister na beloftes. Soos die agbare premier, soos die agbare Dakmo sê, in hierdie provinsie waar ons mense bly, weet ons, hierdie toespraak was van bo blink en onderstink. Die boetie-boetie verhoudinge wat die DA het, veral met hulle finansiële ondersteuners, is skokkend veral in Kaap-Agulhas. In Arniston is daar 'n man wie se naam ons het, wat sy munisipale dienste rekening vanaf 1.4 miljoen tot 380.000 rand afgesny is deur die munisipaliteit. Die DA ken die man baie goed. Dieselfde persoon is deur die hof opdrag gegee dat hy die grond R599 in Arniston terug moet gee aan die munisipaliteit nadat die belastingbetalers vereniging plaaslik die saak in die hof gewen het. Die munisipaliteit wil nou skik op 10 miljoen rand vir die grond, terwyl die waarde van dit baie meer is en wat die gemeenskap selfs kan gebruik vir behuising. Maar omdat hierdie boetie-boetie gedrag is tussen die DA en die ondersteuners en die munisipaliteit, is dit weer eens die hof wat dalk genader moet word. Die agbare premier moet 'n bietjie Kaap-Agulhas toe gaan en navraag doen oor 'n hotel-eienaar wat boetie-boetie is met die munisipaliteit. Kyk wat gebeur nou. Die DA stel 'n munisipale bestuurder in Langebeg aan, meneer Albert de Klerk, wat onder 'n skandaal uit Midwal weg is. Daar word verslag gegee dat hy betrokke was by 'n werksgeleenthede verkoop sage. Premier, u praat oor sogenaamde grondbesettings, maar wat van hierdie landskaping wat in Arniston aangaan deur hierdie einste hotel-eienaar? It is also not surprising that most of, if not all, of the quarantine sites in Agulhas was run by the hotel owner, a close friend of the DA. Die vishuisprojek word gesaboteer en die gemeenskap van Cassiesbaai sukkel om dit te open en operasioneel te maak. Maar net die munisipaliteit sal weet hoekom die projek nie van die grond af kan kom nie. Bo blink, onder stink. In area F in Bredasdorp staan huise leeg en word gevandaliseer. Maar in plaas van mense in die huise sit, word daar 2.1 miljoen rand spandeer op die Red Ends vir sekuriteitsdienste. Die huise was gebou voor die beginstelde lys toegeken en gefinaliseer was. En ons kan verwysing maak na baie ander gevalle waar presies dieselfde gebeur het. bo blink en onderstink. Speaker, the Honorable Premier said, and I quote, when something is giving you a competitive advantage to this extent, it only makes sense to invest in it further. And that is why leveraging our agricultural economy and growth for growth and recovery is key priority in the Western Cape in the year ahead. African and colored farmers, especially in the Agulhas area and in the Overberg in general, are complaining that they are not being afforded the same opportunities. In other words, the investment is going only to those who benefited in the past. Too little transformation has occurred in agriculture, while the majority of the people of Overberg continue to be excluded from this success in the agricultural sector. This success is only celebrated by a few, the few who have also benefited from the past. The majority don't own the success and so continue to feel excluded. For example, a quarter of working population in Agulhas is unemployed. Your MEC of Agriculture does not believe that more must be done to include African and colored people in the agricultural or aquaculture sectors. So how then will more people, the majority of people, have ownership in this success? Bo blink, ondersteuning. Here in Theewaterskloof municipality, there is hardly any senior management, with the majority of posts being in acting positions. Amongst others, he suggested that this is so that the former municipal manager can continue to be employed as a consultant given his 18-month contract. 135 kilometers away in the quiet town of Swellendam lies the DA mess. After over 5 years, the SIU has still not completed its investigation, while other investigations now into PPEs as well are piling up. If the Honorable Premier is serious about dealing with corruption in our municipalities, he will deal with them himself and allow his MEC to pick and not allow his MEC to pick and choose what municipalities must be targeted and investigated. As die agbare ernstig is oor korrupsie en maladministrasie, dan sal hy die munisipale bestuurder 'n opdrag gee om die ouditeurs-generaal se verslag aan die raadslede van Swellendam te gee. Volgens die munisipale bestuurder van Swellendam is die ouditeur-generaal se verslag vertroulik en mag nie met raadslede gedeel word nie. Wat steek julle weg? Ons wil die waarheid weet. Onder die DA se beheer in 8 munisipale werkers in Swellendam betaal terwyl hulle by die huis sit. En 'n ander 8 word ekstra betaal omdat die 8 wat by die huis sit om hulle werk dan te doen. Dis nou 'n DA-regering. As die DA die geveg teen korrupsie ernstig vat, sal hy nie die huidige burgemeester van Swellendam in daai pos het nie. Toe die raad 'n besluit neem oor windterminale, toe bly 2 DA-raadslede toepstil oor die feit dat hulle belange het in die plase waarop hierdie terminale sou gebou word. Dis een ding om te spog van lifestyle audits vir sy kabinetslede, maar as dit kom by van die belangstelling van die DA-burgemeesters, dan draai die agbare premier sy gesig. But the jobs for Pel doesn't stop here in Theewaterskloof. It also goes to the heart of the city of Cape Town administration. The sudden departure of Richard Bosman under the cloud of early retirement should once again raise alarming bells for the residents of Cape Town. Crispin Oliver, in his book, A House Divided, details how the factional wars were happening in the DA. The city purged officials with talent and men and women with institutional memory in order to appoint pals and Yabas people. Today, in the wake of latest DA factional wars and upcoming local government elections, officials in the city are again being targeted. The booty culture persists in the DA as companies headed by former leader Tony Leon, like Resolve, get work from the city of Cape Town, and while the DA stacks state entities such as Westgrow with its party acts. The Honorable MEC for local government, as chair in the province, gets away with interfering in the appointment of municipal staff. The ANC's head of cadre deployment is simply not the Minister of Kokta. The ANC, it seems, can teach the DA a thing or two of not creating conflict of interest. Die realiteit is dat lewe van die meerderheid van die mense in die Overberg nie vandag beter is nie. Dit is veral nie beter na 'n dag waar die premier was gister nie. Dit is nie beter na 'n dekade van DRG nie. Die plaaswerkers, die mense van Paradyspark, die mense van Zwelizle, Mount Pleasant, Grabouw, Predasdorp is nie in ag geneem in die premier se toespraak nie. Dit was 'n toespraak vir plaaseienaars, die mense wie op Arabel bly en diegene wat in Gauteng werk, wat huise in Hermanus besit. Dis DA bo blink, maar onderstund. Speaker, allow me to quote from the President's State of the Nation when he said, and I quote, "We are proceeding with our efforts to strengthen the local government infrastructure and accelerate service delivery through the district development model. The model brings all three spheres of government to focus on key priorities and implementation in critical high-impact projects. Working with both public and private partners, government is implementing a range of measures to support municipalities," unquote. The President, Ramaphosa, it would seem, gives the people of Overberg more hope than their own premier does. Instead of coming here to campaign for local government elections, the President states that emphasis is being placed on local government infrastructure in the district development model. Die mense van Kaapagullis en die Weskaap moet net 'n bietjie vasbyt. Hou nog net so 'n tydjie uit. Get rid of this DA. Let us join forces later this year and let us send the DA on a direct blue flight back to New York. Baie dankie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Smith. I now recognize Honourable Philander. Honourable Fernanda, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Adjunct Speaker, Premier, lede, gaste, mense van die Vallei van Genade en mense van die Weskaap. Our road to long-lasting recovery began yesterday with the rollout of the first Johnson & Johnson vaccinations. To the healthcare workers who have been on the front lines and continue to work tirelessly, this is the beginning of hope we so desperately need. And I wish to assure our frontline workers, especially that as a member of the legislature, I will continue to work fervently in monitoring the rollout of these vaccinations, and that every pledge made, whether by the Premier or the President, is upheld. However, Speaker, yesterday's vaccine event occurred off the back of one of the ANC national government's failures, hell-bent in their centralized power approach, a weak vaccination procurement. Praat van bo blink onder stink. As dit nie so hartseer was nie, was dit amper snaaks. Agbare adjunct Speaker, yesterday was historic and it shows of a capable, committed government. Whilst the Western Cape was ready to administer the very first jabs in South Africa, wat ons gister gesien het in Khayelitsha was die ANC president, die ANC minister wat onder flitsende ligte die hospitaal inkom. En jy kan nie help om vir jouself te wonder nie, het hierdie mense nie 'n gewete nie, het hulle nie skaamte nie. Because of them, thousands of healthcare workers, thousands of frontline workers and the broader nation are deprived of a vaccine. Maar daar is 'n gesegde adjunct Speaker wat sê, die hond het die skaamte opgevreet. This is the real state of affairs, and one for which residents deserve so much better. One would think that with something as critical as procuring a life-saving vaccine, a party who has been in government for more than 20 years would be able to concentrate every effort in throwing this sustainable lifeline. The ANC has written a playbook for failed governance with many blank pages stained with fraud and corruption. At the same time, it is the DA-led Western Cape government that leads from the front to ensure that jobs, safety and dignity are delivered to residents. During a time when COVID-19 draconian regulations made it almost impossible for infrastructure projects to come to completion, it is in Genadendal that the DA-led Western Cape pushed through adversities and the 7 million rand refurbishment project to Genadendal Clinic is in completion phase. Speaker, why is it so difficult for the ANC national-led government to act in the best interest of South Africans? Why is it that corruption tops all efforts and the president is perpetually in a state of shock? Why is it that it is missed 2 payment dates for the much anticipated vaccine and still manages to secure a compromised vaccine for South Africans? But the DA-led Western Cape writes its own playbook for effective, caring government. Ethically and constitutionally, we lead from the front. The government innovated through every phase of this pandemic. It started with the most effective stay-home communication campaign while taking residents into their confidence and cautiously preparing the system that withstood the test of time. The data-led and widely nationwide implemented hotspot strategy to mitigate the effects of blanket bans on the poverty pandemic, extended relief funds objectively through DCAS and DDAT to transport essential workers to and from service sites safely. We saw today how the provincial department, we saw it and we've experienced it, how the provincial department of social development stepped in when the ANC SASSA stepped out. It looked out, our government looked out for the most vulnerable, for diabetic patients with a vector telemedicine initiative, maintained sufficient levels of oxygen supply during the second wave, and swiftly transformed and capacitated facilities with staff and equipment to offering hope when beds became few. Speaker, then the Premier announced the escalation of the provincial procurement process, locating alternative shots and finalization of the anticipated budget allocation to make this a reality in supplication of national efforts. By doing so, the Western Cape upholds its ethical commitment to the well-being of its residents and maintains its constitutional mandate towards healthcare. And as vaccines arrive bi-weekly as promised, hopefully, Speaker, the province remains steadfast to work with national government through the Western Cape's readiness to roll out swiftly and seamlessly. Centers are equipped with fridges and syringes and resourced with 2,000 trained staff as mandated, whilst maintaining preparation of a third wave as we await more vaccines. The Premier made mention we can look forward to bringing 2 more clinics, 2 emergency centers, and the Forensic Pathology Center online in the current financial year. To conclude, I want to use this opportunity through you, Speaker, to ask members with colleagues in the national government to find out how we're going to recover the AZ vaccine funding. We need to move forward and with more vaccines. We want to get to work with proven capability. My pledge, Speaker, is that as the chairperson of health in the province, I am committed to overseeing the ways in which the provincial government has and must continue to boldly step up, using every resource as to its disposal to fight the pandemic and ensure the well-being of our residents remains priority number 1. Speaker, die DA-beheerde Weskaap-regering word keer op keer gekritiseer omdat hulle 'n omgee-regering is. Wat werk vir die mense van die Weskaap? Wat het die ANC om te wys?
Honourable members, in the chamber here, we will just suspend for a few minutes. There seems to be a complete
Suid-Afrika moet werk
glitch.
tot voordeel van al haar mense.
Honourable Member
Stuur
Philander to
gerus 'n
repeat
bladsy
the
uit ons
speech
boek.
as soon as we
Ek dank u adeeng speaker.
Honourable Member Philander, can you hear me?
Yes, she's done.
Honourable
She's
Member
done.
Philander,
She's done.
I apologise. We have a glitch. I don't know if you can hear us. We have suspended the House for a few minutes where we will require that you repeat and reread your speech for the records as we did not hear it. So if you could just prepare until I'm absolutely sure that we actually are back online. I'm assuming that you can hear me.
We have heard everything.
Okay, my apologies, members who are in the chamber in Wales Street and those that are online in MS Teams. We had a disconnection of our internet here and we're unable to follow through. Can I ask that Honourable Philander, my apologies to do this to you, if you could please redo your speech for the record. Thank you very much.
Order,
Please
Speaker.
reset the time. 1 minute, Honourable Philander. Give me a second on chat. Has anybody raised a point of order? Honourable
Speaker.
Smith, what's your point of order? Yes.
Speaker, it's
I hear
Honorable
you.
Smith. I would just want to make sure if my speech was audible and live, because I was just the previous speaker before Honorable Fernanda. I just wanted to make sure, Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable Smith, loud and clear it was. Thank you very much. Honourable Philander, over to you.
She was also loud and clear.
Adeeng Speaker, Premier, lede, gaste, mense van die Vallei van Genade en mense van die Wes-Kaap. Our road to long-lasting recovery began yesterday with the rollout of the first Johnson & Johnson vaccinations. To the healthcare workers who have been on the front lines and continue to work tirelessly, this is the beginning of hope we so desperately need. And I wish to assure our frontline workers, especially as a member of this legislature, I will continue to work fervently in monitoring the rollout of these vaccines, and that every pledge made, whether by the Premier or the President, is upheld. However, Speaker, yesterday's vaccine event occurred off the back of one of the ANC in national government's failures. Hell-bent in their centralized power approach, a weak vaccination procurement program is at play. Agbare Adeeng Speaker, die lede praat van bo blink en onder stink. As dit nie so hartseer was nie, was dit snaaks. You weet, Speaker, yesterday was a historic moment in Khayelitsha. It shows of a committed and a capable government, whilst the very first jabs were administered in the Western Cape. All we saw yesterday was the ANC president
Honourable Member, can you hear me? There we go. Continue, please.
het hulle 'n gewete, het hulle skaamte. Because did they even think about the thousands of healthcare workers, the thousands of frontline workers? But no, Speaker, dit is bo blink onder stink. En daar is 'n spreekwoord wat sê, die hond het die skaamte opgevreet. I would think that with something as critical as procuring a life-saving vaccine, a party who has been in government for more than 20 years would be able to concentrate every effort in throwing this sustainable lifeline. The ANC has written a playbook for failed governance with many blank pages with fraud and corruption. At the same time, it is the DA-led Western Cape government that leads from the front to ensure that jobs, safety, and dignity are delivered to residents. During a time when COVID-19 draconic regulations made it almost impossible for infrastructure projects to come to completion, it is in Genadendal that the DA-led Western Cape pushed through adversities, and a 7 million rand refurbishment project to Genadendal Clinic is in completion phase. Speaker, why is it so difficult for the ANC national government to act in the best interest of South Africans? Why is that corruption tops all efforts and the president is perpetually in a state of shock? Why is it that there's 2 missed payment dates for the much anticipated vaccine and still managed to secure a compromised vaccine for South African needs? But the DA-led Western Cape writes its own playbook for effective, caring governance. Ethically and constitutionally, we lead from the front. The government innovated through every phase of this pandemic. It started with the most effective stay-home communication campaign while taking residents in their confidence and cautiously preparing the system that withstood the test of time. The data-led and widely nationwide implemented hotspot strategy to mitigate the effects of blanket bans on the poverty pandemic, extended relief funds objectively through DCAS and DBAT to transport essential workers to and from service sites safely. We saw and we experienced how the Provincial Department of Social Development stepped in as the ANC SASSA stepped out. It looked out for the most, our government looked out for the most vulnerable. For diabetic patients with a vector telemedicine initiative, maintained sufficient levels of oxygen supply during the second wave, and swiftly transformed and capacitated facilities with staff and equipment, offering hope when beds became few. Speaker, then the Premier announces the escalation of the provincial procurement process, locating alternative shots and the finalization of the anticipated budget allocation to make this a reality in supplication of national efforts. By doing so, the Western Cape upholds its ethical commitment to the well-being of residents and maintains its constitutional mandate towards healthcare. And as vaccine arrives bi-weekly as promised, hopefully, Speaker, the province remains steadfast to work with national government through the Western Cape's readiness to roll out swiftly and seamlessly. Centers are equipped with fridges and syringes and resourced with 2,000 trained staff as mandated, whilst maintaining preparation of a third wave as we all await more vaccine. The Premier made mention we can look forward to bringing 2 more clinics, 2 emergency centers, and the Forensic Pathology Center online in this financial year. To conclude, Speaker, I want to use this opportunity through you to ask members with colleagues in national government to find out how we could recover the funds of the AstraZeneca vaccine. We need to move forward and with more vaccines. We want to get to work with proven capability. My pledge, Speaker, is that as the chairperson of health in the province, I am committed to overseeing the ways in which this provincial government has and must continue to boldly step up, using every resource at its disposal to fight the pandemic and ensure the well-being of our residents remains priority number 1. Speaker, die DA-beheerde Wes-Kaapse regering word keer op keer gekritiseer omdat hulle 'n omgee regering is wat werk vir hulle mense. Wat het die ANC om te wys? Teleurstelling op teleurstelling. Ons wil nie hê die Wes-Kaap moet werk nie. Ons wil hê Suid-Afrika moet werk tot voordeel van al haar mense. So kom skeer gerus 'n bladsy uit ons boek. Ek dank u, Adjunct Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honourable Philander, for repeating your speech. We now call on Honourable Member Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Premier, members and guests. First of all, I want to say thank you for the Speaker and Deputy Speaker for bringing Parliament to the people, to Genadendal, the Valley of Grace. And yesterday we were in Genadendal in the museum and other areas, and the rich history that we heard yesterday, and I really want to honor Dr. Bali for his contribution to Genadendal. And the interesting fact is that with the little resources that they displayed what Genadendal can do and will do in the future. So I'm glad I'm here. And an interesting fact, when we were at the museum, there was a little Bible that was given to Magdalena from a Mr. Smith, a Moravian evangelist from Germany, dated 1744. And when Dr. Bali concluded his message to us, his storytelling to us, he quoted two scriptures and he looked us in the eyes and he said to us, Second Chronicles 7:14, where he said, if my people are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins and heal their land. And then he quoted Matthew 6:33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. I think he was thinking of the difficult time we're going through, and he really wanted to encourage us and motivate us. And I really pray that we as leaders will ask God's wisdom to give us breakthrough in this time, not only with COVID-19, but if we look at the economy, if we look at our safety, that we'll go back and seek his face, and I believe we will be a prosperous nation. To get to the Premier's speech, I heard the rollout of the Western Cape vaccination program, and of course, anything and everything must be done. The question I have for the Premier is, when you have healthcare workers that have concerns or, according to the beliefs, do not want to choose to vaccinate, will they be marginalized or victimized? That's a question I got from health workers. Another question, Premier, the ACDP has taken the National Minister to court to allow ivermectin to be prescribed by licensed healthcare professionals. If ivermectin works, will you join the ACDP in taking the national government to court? Another question, Premier, is little is said about immune boosters. Will you look at giving to the most vulnerable the vitamin C's, the vitamin D's, and the zincs in order to boost their immune system? Speaker, the ICDP welcomes the deployment of the 500 extra law enforcement officers later this year. And the Premier mentioned in the safety plan that there will also be appointed investigators. I think it's 150 of them. Is that still part of your plan? Because now with the extra policing, there will be a burden on investigating these cases. The ACDP, of course, believes the power of policing must be devolved, and we will have an effective, easier to manage police, just not oversight. We need real powers, and that is operational powers, so that we can keep the people of the Western Cape safe. Federalism will strengthen South Africa and strengthen our provinces and make it more prosperous. The ACDP also believes there's low-hanging fruit, and I'll always bat neighborhood watches and our police forums to be fully equipped and fully resourced. Premier, you've also mentioned the safety ambassadors. And when I look at the safety ambassadors, we agree with that. But when you walk in any township, in a township, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, you'll see young youth sitting on the street corners. And a proposal is, why don't we get the bricklayers, the plumbers, the carpenters, the retired ones, and get those youngsters from the streets and equip them? A lot of them are unskilled, and they need to be skilled in order to be employed, because at the moment they're a menace to society. So, Premier, I would want you to think about that. Coming to the amendments of the Western Cape Liquor Act, I cannot understand and I struggle to comprehend. And the ICDP is calling for liquor outlets to be closed on Sundays. Sundays was a peace-loving day. Now, Mondays, employees don't pitch up because of alcohol. I went to a community in Genadendal not so long ago, and they called Sundays the drinkdag, die sportdrinkdag of iets wat dit noem hulle het. And it's really hard to see what alcohol is doing. So I want to see, is there going to be a reduction in days, reduction in hours, and also the quantity of alcohol for individual? Are you going to address that?
Finish your honourable member.
Okay, Deputy Speaker, I'll finish just with this. Just land, if there's no land in the city, will you take job opportunities to people when there's land available in other parts of the province? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians. I now recognise Honourable Mitchell.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier, inwoners van hierdie pragtige historiese dorp Genadendal, members of the House. Deputy Speaker, I'm reminded of a quote by the late President Nelson Mandela. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It's an act of justice. It is the protection of fundamental human rights, the right to dignity and a decent life, close quote. But Deputy Speaker, imagine having to wake up at 3 a.m. every morning, having to get your family ready for the day ahead before heading off to work as a single parent. Arriving at a train station, waiting for a train that may arrive on time or may be hours late, or even worse, one that may never arrive. In the case of the latter, then set out to a taxi rank in fear of the violence and genuine concerns for your life as your only option. Deputy Speaker, this is the reality of thousands of daily commuters in the Western Cape. So when we speak about overcoming poverty and providing dignity, Deputy Speaker, we certainly must speak to getting to work through a safe, reliable transport system. We cannot speak about job safety or dignity with this integral part of our everyday lives.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
I know that just 1 minute.
About the WCRA was possibly looking at the appointment in March.
Yes.
I didn't know that there was a vacancy that was open. When I checked the WCRA website, there was no vacancies on that. And I was surprised.
Honourable members, someone is speaking on the phone on MST.
They're speaking about cadre deployment, vacancies.
Honourable Mitchell, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, in order for the rail service to run at optimum capacity, 88 train sets are required, of which only 33 are currently operating. Since 2017, More than 140 carriages, which makes up 40 train sets, have been torched in the Western Cape. Only 7 of the 34 of Metro Rail's train lines are operational, and this is at reduced capacity, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the question is, waar is die nasionale minister? Missing in action van die mense van die Weskaap tel net verkiesingstye. In spite of the arson attacks, vandalism and theft, over 400 people have been arrested, amounting to a total of over 370 years worth of convictions. And although multiple arrests have been made, too few convictions have come from it. Again, Deputy Speaker, waar is die nasionale regering missing in action, want die Weskaapse mense tel net gedurende die verkiesing. The duty of ensuring an effectively run rail service in the Western Cape has become an uphill battle for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Since 2019 until this week, the Cape Town Central Line has not been in service, and I may add, halted on the same day it reopened, and other routes have been indefinitely suspended. Deputy Speaker, waar is die president en die nasionale minister missing in action, want die Weskaapse mense tel net gedurende verkiesingstyd? While there is no clear way forward from the national government, the Western Cape government has stepped in with credible solutions. Speaker, the glimpse of hope has come in the form of a memorandum of agreement signed by the provincial government in conjunction with PRASA to revive the Central Line. This is how we lead from the front in the Western Cape. Speaker, I therefore welcome the Premier's commitment to ensure that we fix the rail system in the Western Cape once and for all, because our residents deserve this. It can never be, Deputy Speaker, that a person wanting to put bread on the table are being held hostage by the incompetence of the ANC government and its entities. But in the Western Cape, we do not just highlight the failures of the national government, we find solutions and step in, because, Deputy Speaker, our residents deserve this. What we need now is for bold vision and planning to come to reality in the single transport authority spoken of by the Premier. This is going to entirely reshape how we view and manage public transport, bringing planning and oversight closer to the people who rely on it. This will ultimately provide the tremendous contribution towards rebuilding the economy. As testimony of this, the DA-led Western Cape government, like it did with the failing rail system, stepped in and created the very innovative Red Dot service, a collaboration with the taxi industry. Innovative and solutions-driven. Honourable Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, I'm reminded of a quote by Brian Tracy: "The true test of leadership is how well you function in a crisis." The DA-led government has passed this test with flying colours, not because of the allegiance to the party, but because it understands what is meant with overcoming poverty through justice, protecting basic rights in service delivery, and empowerment through partnerships and putting dignified livelihoods first. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mitchell. I now recognise Honourable Murray.
Members, die premier besluit om nie sy geskrewe toespraak te lewer nie, maar om ad lib te praat, het my laat wonder, wie het hy toespraak geskryf? Wat hy nie wou lees nie. Is dit die linkervleuel, die regtervleuel, is dit die progressiewes, is die liberaliste in die DA, wie het die toespraak geskryf? Wie se stem het ons gister gehoor? Was dit die stem van die Bybelse Jakob, of was dit die hande van die harige esel? Is die kiesers die blinde Isak wat verneek gaan word? Premier, wie se erfporsie mag beroof word as gevolg van die stilswye oor grondonteiening byvoorbeeld? Genadendal, Elimson, jy was op Genadendal, Hoekom het jy nie hulle versekering gegee? Hulle grond sal beveilig word nie. Premier, as a visionary, you've dropped the ball. You referred to federalism only as a side issue instead of expanding on this vision. It is worthwhile noting that the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Minister Meyer, has been brave enough to admit that your party's policy is one of subsidiarity. I was hoping that in your speech you would have unpacked this further. We must uncouple the Western Cape from this runaway train with a sleeping driver at the steering wheel at national level. You said nothing about land expropriation without compensation, which is causing greater stress and to commercial and emerging coloured and white farmers. Having trusted the ANC government with managing Eskom, Denel, SAA, SABC, which they drove into bankruptcy, how can we trust them with land expropriation and running this country, the Western Cape, by remote control? State-controlled lands like Mamre, Harlem, Slangrivier, Zoar, Ebenezer, Kranshoek, Saron, Freemas and Genadendal received no mention in your speech. Will they receive the necessary funding, Premier, and training to become successful commercial farmers? You have failed to even mention anything yesterday except holding a briberies. They will need our protection against land invaders. Yes, you were silent. Are you also walking in a minefield like President Ramaphosa, a no-man, where man in a nowhere land? That is the words of your national leader, which he said in the Sona debate. Job opportunities is nothing else but temporary work that pays less than the national minimum wage. Free the Cape, unshackle us from a corrupt system, give us a reasonable chance to survive. In 1976, we all sang, freedom isn't free. You have paid the price. You must sacrifice for your liberty. We never knew then we will be paying a price still in 2021, and we'll be sacrificing still in 2021, and we will sacrifice for the rest of our lives unless we get rid of the ANC. Free the Cape. The people of the Western Cape deserve federalism, federal autonomy. We deserve adequate housing, not housing opportunities, which is just a fancy name for shack dwelling. The Premier asked members for ideas and proposals. Many of the ideas proposed by me have initially been rejected, but later implemented, and I want to thank members of his cabinet. I will give you examples. I propose the rollout of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It's locally manufactured, it's cheaper, and it has efficacy. But the health department in the Western Cape rejected it, telling me, no, it's not effective. They changed their minds now. I propose the enlarging of the municipal police, and I thank Minister Fritz. He's doing a great job. I propose the employment of highway patrol officers. That is now a fact. I asked the health department to concentrate on the fight against diabetes, because that is what caused so many COVID-19 patients to die. They've now done it. Delivering people's chronic medication to their homes was also my proposal, and it's worked to help the poor. And now I call for federal autonomy. I call on you, even if I must do what Steenhuisen do and sing you that song of the Beatles, but it's a different song. Federal autonomy. I want to say to you, we need to say, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I hope someday, DA and ANC, you'll join us, and the Western Cape will stand as one. I dream the impossible dream. I will fight the seemingly unbeatable foe. This is my quest. My quest is to follow that star of a free Western Cape, self-determined, run by professional politicians, people who has the guts, the experience, the knowledge to bring the Western Cape into the picture as the Hong Kong of South Africa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray. I now recognise Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Premier, Leader of the Opposition, honorable members, residents of Genadendal, I salute you. Deputy Speaker, I stand before you today in one of South Africa's most historic towns of Western Cape, a town of many firsts. The town that printed the very first Afrikaans novel, Dear Waterskloof, presents visitors with charming towns rich with history and culture. When we think of Genadendal, we think of the reason why it was called Genadendal, why it was named a valley of faith, the valley of grace. The Premier was right when he said that Genadendal could be a gem of tourist destination in South Africa. But Genadendal has not been immune to COVID-19 regulations, which shut down much of the tourism industry in the Western Cape. Many of the small and informal business in Genadendal are based either on the tourism industry or its value chain. The last year has seen jobs lost, livelihood threatened because of the pandemic. Deputy Speaker, I need to tell the Premier that while we have achieved tremendously bold interventions for the benefit of the people of the province, we still have much to do in Genadendal. When it comes to the farming community, Genadendal has suffered at the hands of budget cuts from Pretoria and a lack of drought support from the National Agricultural Ministry. This is despite the Dear Waterskloof municipality contributes the highest percentage, not only in the agricultural sector, to this district, but it exports the most in terms of fruits. This consequently contributes to the exports from Western Cape and has been a shining light of hope over the past years. Premier, allow me to tell a story about a local farm of Klein Ezer, where a farmer from this area, a son of Dear Waterskloof soil, built himself up from scratch. He received funding from various avenues, including much funding and assistance from the provincial government, in particular, the Department of Agriculture, some of it during your own tenure as Minister of Agriculture. Premier, Mr. Andre Klute has done everything he possibly can do to ensure that his farm is a success. And what a success it has been. He has received certificates of ethical farming and the support extended to his employees. But Deputy Speaker and Premier, there is an obstacle that is lying in Andre's path. And it is not a new obstacle, and it's not a unique obstacle to Andre and his farm. And it is definitely not a unique obstacle to young black farmers who have pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps. And the obstacle that is lying in his path is the fact that he does not own the farm that he invests in. He invests capital in. Andre wants national government to sell the land to him. He's not looking for a handout. He's not asking anyone to show him favor. He's asking for what is rightful his. He worked that land with his own bare hands. He has invested in that land, and he has given back to this community of Dear Waterskloof over and over again, thanks to that land, the support of this government. It is not right that those that are skilled, those that are passionate, Premier, those that have shown that they are able to do the job must also own the land which they have invested in. Andre doesn't know what will happen when his rental agreement ends. That is not fair to him. It is also not fair towards all of his employees and those who benefit from their labor. Deputy Speaker, there are other Andres in this area, indeed the whole country, who we need to help. We cannot end funding to Andre until we are sure that national government will sell him this land, because otherwise our efforts and Andre's efforts would have all been in vain. National government's cooperation is desperately needed if farmers like Andre Klute and those on the housing database are going to have the security and dignity of owning their own title deeds, because a title deed means access, a title deed means opportunity. In conclusion, Premier, I call on you to engage the National Department with the Minister of Agriculture to not only assist Andre Klute, but every Andre Klute in the area and in the Western Cape to receive what is rightfully theirs and what they have worked so hard to achieve. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Maseko. I now recognise Honourable Brinkhuis. We just want to clean the podium first.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Premier, honourable members of the House, the greater community of Genadendal. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and good afternoon to everybody. Al-Jamaa welcomes the Western Cape's effort to recover the economy after the first and second wave of COVID-19, which had a great negative impact on our economy and the personal lives of thousands of people. Thank you for your sober rollout plan for the vaccinations. We applaud the Western Cape efforts to save jobs and to create more jobs. Honourable Premier, you have rightfully praised the agricultural sector on how well organized farm workers managed to work without spreading the COVID-19 disease, as in the case of social gatherings. Farm workers across the Western Cape are still facing evictions from farms, and in the Drakensberg municipality, where luxurious housing estates are being developed, up to 20,000 people who grew up on farms are facing evictions. We continue to question the closure of schools, especially schools in rural areas, such as Voorgroenberg Primary School in Wellington. We call on the Premier to stop the closures and to provide us with a transparent report on such plans. Under the DA leadership, our best teachers have been fired, like the principal of South Peninsula High School, Mr. Brian Isaacs. The community has lost some of his best educators, like Mr. Isaacs, and the DA leadership is targeting more of our best educators. I hope, and I sincerely hope, that this is not a hidden agenda. This hidden agenda is continuing and destroying morale of our best teachers on the Cape Flats. Honourable Premier, Al-Jamaa will support your plans. Al-Jamaa will support your plans to grow our tourism industry. We will set up a tourist promotional desk at our Western Cape constituency office and target tourists from Indonesia and Malaysia and the UAE, etc. The Al Jamaah's president, Honorable Hanif Hendricks, has very, very good relations with Muslim political parties in these countries and their tourism missions. We welcome the province efforts to boost its crime-fighting capacity by 1,000 local officers. We are indeed glad to hear that the province has plans to implement strategies to act against the root causes of violence, such as implementing effective action against Shabeens in residential areas. Shabeens are found at almost every street corner, breeding dens for drugs, violent crimes, and gender-based violence. We support your plans. We support your plans to prevent the road transportation of drugs and urge you to deal with corrupt station commanders and police officers. Al Jamaah welcomes the province plan to change the alcohol legislation. Honorable Premier, I beg you to also stop schools from selling alcohol at their functions. With such harsh realities on the ground, our township and Cape Flat areas need urgent and effective interventions to wipe out gangsterism and other social ills. I thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Brinkhuis. I now recognise Honourable Bosman.
Goedemiddag, achtbare speaker, premier, collega's en die mense van die Weskaap. Speaker, when I visited the SASSA Bellville office, I gained insight into the hopelessness in an agency meant to offer assistance to our most vulnerable residents. Hundreds stood in line, many without any certainty of where they were going to be able to find money to put food on the table for their families that evening. And tragically, Mrs. Mabudela from Grabo passed away while waiting in line to renew her social from the agency charged with supporting the most vulnerable. This is but one example of the many devastating incidences people suffer at SASSA offices. But Deputy Speaker, through you to the vulnerable, elderly and the frail, I'd say there's leadership that genuinely cares, that empathizes with the plight of the poor, and that has and will do everything it can for your upliftment. As a member of this legislature and as the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Social Development, it is my responsibility to see that it is government that muster their entire capability to address the second pandemic of unemployment and poverty. Deputy Speaker, as I continue in oversight, I see on the one hand a National Minister of Social Development on site whilst police use water cannons against disabled grant applicants. But at the same time, I review a Western Cape government which pays its subsidies to ECD centres and care facilities on time, every time. And this is what I'm encouraged because it allows me to say to those who need a helping hand that the helping hand is here. By partnering with brilliant NGOs, supervision, and other caring service providers, Western Cape government provides safe nets. This kind of partnership teaches us a fundamental lesson that government departments must not operate in silos. One cannot go it alone. It takes every department to support the dignity in place. For example, our Western Cape Department of Agriculture has rolled out support to over 2,500 community food gardens, growing food security from the ground. But when I look at National for support, I find the government eager to extend an undignified, uncaring land reform agenda with no attention to the immediate needs of the community. I see a Western Cape Department of Social Development set aside 146 million rand programs to aid persons with disability. This whilst our national minister refuses to extend temporary disability grants. We witness a province which supports the elderly to protect against COVID-19 and ensures that funds follow the number of elderly residents who benefit from the subsidies we offer to their care agencies. But astonishingly, at the very same time, the vulnerable subject to a national government does not timeously renew disability grants or provide clarity on emergency relief. Deputy Speaker, from an oversight perspective, the fact is that the experience of a caring government which strives to offer dignity is felt most profoundly through the effort of this Western Cape government and DA-led municipalities. It is not at all a stretched belief to say that the national government is in no way capable of supporting our most vulnerable residents. The solutions we have are proactive and they focus on dealing with the crisis at hand. This is the type of caring government we need, primarily in charge of social upliftment, one which recognizes the value that the safety net holds within a society for the step up needed for those who are finding themselves in profoundly devastating times such as these. Deputy Speaker, from a constitutional perspective, and even more so from the perspective of a South African who wants the best for his fellow residents, it is crystal clear that a capable government able to provide meaning to dignity is found in this Western Cape. This is where I echo the sentiments of the Premier that we ought to boldly pursue federal avenues for providing even more effective, profound delivery of care. And so I invite colleagues, Speaker, including the opposition, to partner with us in reimagining social welfare support in this country. Let us work together so that those closest to the needs of the poor are greater and able to offer the lifelines we all know are so incredibly needed. This will avoid national ministers flying into the Western Cape to exploit the suffering of the most vulnerable, whilst offering no concrete support and assistance. Deputy Speaker, in the last week, we saw how a tragic accident was turned into a political spectacle as families tried to mourn. The national ministers of social development and human settlements wasted no time in assigning blame, but took no responsibility for the lack of housing bill or the lack of support to those families. This, as the Honourable Windvogel attempt to blame our capable Minister of Community Safety when she ignores the deliberate water bombing of disabled people outside of the SASSA office in Bellville by her Minister, Lindiwe Zulu. In the name of supporting the vulnerable, let us work together so that national government devolves social support competencies and budgets to financially stable, capable subnational governments such as this Western Cape. This will contribute to the future where the vulnerable are not simply uplifted, but offered a path to dignity and a future of meaningful freedom for themselves, their families, and their communities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bosman. I now recognise Honourable Sayed.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members of the legislature, as we close this debate today, the African National Congress of Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo wishes to thank the members of the public who have attended the SOPA and its debate in the last 2 days, especially those in Genadendal. But sadly, while the Democratic Alliance comes to Genadendal to brag and to gloat even on national delivery, we know that for this province, as they say, boe blink onder stink. The DA booty relationship with hotel owners and farm owners will continue, especially those farm owners that are racist and that Honourable MEC Mayor refuses to take action against. The majority of the people here in the Overberg will continue to struggle while our farm workers will continue to live in the most horrid of conditions. We heard a speech from the Premier that gives no details, with no budgets. Slogans such as leading from the front. The Western Cape will be the first province to defeat load shedding. The Western Cape will go it alone on the vaccine rollout. We know it's an election year. And so the DA has simply started their election campaign when they are starting to lose votes in the Western Cape, as the by-elections have shown. But we know, like most, but we said it must be done in a responsible manner. We presented innovative ways in which it must be done. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this provincial government's insistence that it goes alone on the vaccine rollouts proves that it has enough money to carry out basic services to our people. But sadly, the federal narrative, the insistence on an exclusivist federalism tells you another story, Deputy Speaker. In the last year, when we raised the issue of safety at schools, we were told there's no money. When we raised the issue of more houses needing to be built, we were told there's no money. when we raised the issue of Tygerberg Hospital needing to be revamped, Worcester Hospital needing to be replaced, more hospitals to be built in rural areas, we were told that there's no money. I hope that the Honorable Philander has noted that. When we raised the issue of helping the CPOA, which I'm very sad that the Honorable Bosman did not raise, saving our 3 old age homes, we were told that there is no money. The provincial government's ability to now suddenly find money proves how they simply don't have the political will to deliver basic services to our people, to change the lives of our people. Like the separate but duplicated rollout of vaccines planned by this provincial government, the School Evaluation Authority was costly and was unnecessary, and a duplication of functions of the districts and the circuit managers. But we understand that this is part of the crude nationalism, the Democratic Alliance that has now risen in the past year or two, that wishes to push for federalism through the Western Cape government, a federalism that undermines national unity, a federalism that sees to the needs of the rich, to the business owners, and undermines the poor and working class, while claiming at the same time hypocritically national delivery. The clinic in Genadendal was funded by national government. The farmer, Andre Kloete, who benefited from the Plus project and has got a 30-year lease, Honorable Maseko, was not because of DA intervention. It was because of ANC national government rural development intervention and assistance. So don't claim national victories and then still want to be a federal state. Learners, especially those from poor working class families, Deputy Speaker, yet the usefulness of the School Evaluation Authority was exposed now during the period when many no-fee schools were charging illegal costs to poor learners, especially those from poor farm worker communities, money for textbooks, stationery, and school fees. At this very school where the SOPA is being hosted, Emil Wedder Secondary School, which we have visited, we find that learners, despite being engaged, despite the school having been engaged and the department being engaged, learners are yet to receive notebooks as promised. And poor parents are now told which shops they must go to buy notebooks while they've got no money. When this injustice and illegal activity was happening, the School Evaluation Authority was nowhere to be found. When the Western Cape schools harbor racists, the WCED protects them and creates a conducive environment for racism to thrive. Now, if the Education Department protects these schools, of what use will the School Evaluation Authority be? The ANC has long proposed that former Model C schools must be engaged to increase their small class sizes, that lineage-based admission policy must be amended, because this will address the issue that we are facing of over 10,000 unplaced learners. But no, you've got an evaluation authority that doesn't address issues. Another example of the entrenched racism is in Rafir Sona End High School, where the education department has put systems in place to block the appointment of a qualified and highly experienced black teacher who was successful in the recruitment process and nominated by the governing body for the post. The learners at the school are largely colored and African, but the teaching staff is white dominated. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased that the MEC for Education, I see on the speakers list, will be speaking immediately after me, because maybe she can tell us whether she will still listen to the community of Klapmuts. They have been engaging a department on how to address their challenges, but the department refuses to build the much needed school in the area, saying again that there is no money. But there's money for vaccines, for their own parallel vaccine program. The community proposes platooning as an interim measure, notwithstanding the related challenges with that. But the WCED and the MEC refuses to listen. They brush them away. They continue busing the children to faraway communities. The community of Grafwater High School opposed the arbitrary closure of this well-attended and good-performing school without proper public participation process. Building a much needed school in one community such as Lambert's Bay does not necessarily mean that you must force the closure of another school. The divide and rule tactics is central to the DA's notion of federalism. We need more schools, not less. We also call on the Premier, Honourable Deputy Speaker, to look urgently at the matter of the construction of the Umyezo Primary School, where the contractor, and I think they should engage with MEC Madikizela, and we will engage with him as well, around public works, where the contractor has been liquidated recently and nothing has happened currently. We need that school to be built as a matter of urgency. The Department of Education will need to bring on board a new contractor engaging with public works. There are many infrastructure challenges in our community schools, yet we must hear again that there is no money, but money for a vaccine rollout. While some of our complaints regarding learner transport challenges in Theewaterskloof have been addressed, and we thank the department for that, we want to call on the Department of Education to respond to the request from Riviersonne and Primary for scholar transport that was made last year in October to Route 269. While the district responded and has worked quite well on the issue, the district has not received a response to date from the head office in Golden Acre. Children now are forced to walk in the morning to school along the N2 and back. It is not surprising, Deputy Speaker, that our Honourable Senior MEC for Local Government, Anton Bredell, did not get an opportunity to speak in this debate. Instead, the Cabinet sends their lackeys here in the legislature to defend him. On Swellendam, the MEC is silent. On the shenanigans of Theewaterskloof, Honourable MEC Bredell is silent. On the Boetie-Boetie relationship in Cape Agulhas, the Honourable MEC is silent. Maybe the MEC of local government silence today, Honourable Deputy Speaker, has got to do with him being reprimanded later today, and we see the motion by Honourable Mackenzie, by the Honourable Premier, for being responsible for a crass example of DA cadre deployment when he goes under DA letterhead and instructs people in municipalities, instructs caucus who must be appointed as officials, while not looking at fit for purpose. Deputy Speaker, another person who was quiet in this debate is the MEC for Human Settlements, Honourable Simmers. But this silence is not due to anything that he has done or has not done. We must commend the Honourable MEC has been making great efforts in terms of not having a federal approach, working well with national government on delivery of houses, whilst there are shortcomings here and there, has made those efforts. He wants to see delivery as well, even in the city of Cape Town, and we commend him for that. But instead, he is not asked to be part of this discussion to shed further light on some of the ways in which we can work together. Instead, his colleague, the MEC for Transport and Public Works, comes in to try and address some of the issues in a way that we know MEC Simmers would possibly have a more constructive approach to deal with those issues. If only, yes, because MEC Simmers understands and he's been speaking about social housing, and there's been some delivery, at least in our communities. If only the Honourable Madikizela would stick to his portfolio, would stick to ensuring that the DA is united, that it does not compromise delivery in the state, would stick to ensure that governance is actually happening, that there's no disruption between the legislative arm and the executive arm as a leader of government business, and deals with the tensions with the Speaker. That would be much better, Deputy Speaker. And that he can then also focus on availing land, on availing buildings to the MEC for Human Settlements, for much needed social housing, to work together with the MEC and not try to speak as if he is the MEC for Human Settlements still. Since 2017, the DA government has imposed numerous threats of eviction over poor and working class people at Woodstock Hospital as so-called illegal occupiers. It is quite clear that the DA have no plan for building social housing for the working class. Hence, an MEC who speaks about such a plan is not allowed to speak in this particular debate. We wonder if it's got to do with the results of the recent DA Congress in the Western Cape. If so, it is very, very sad. In 2019, again, Western Cape High Court ruled on the Tafelberg land in Sea Point, public land available to develop social housing. Again, The city and the Western Cape DA government are delayed to develop this land. Yet, we find that Cape Town is one of the most unequal cities in South Africa and in the world. Deputy Speaker, as we conclude, I think I didn't want to respond much to MEC Mayor, but really, if the population in the Western Cape wants to see the Democratic Alliance in the union buildings, you would not be losing by-elections every time there's a by-election called, especially in areas where you say that you are strong. You will never ever enter the union buildings, especially with that stinking attitude of racism and federalism, and go and march in front of Parliament with racist farmers brandishing the old South African flag, because that is the order that you speak to when you speak about your notion of federalism. This is not a sincere notion. You're not talking about delivery to the mass of the Western Cape. It's a racist notion wanting to be exclusive. This is why, again, he fails to address the killings. He fails to address the conditions in which poor farm workers work in the farms. The DA will never occupy the union buildings. We call upon the people of the Western Cape to think when it comes to the local government elections and remove the DA from these municipalities, as they have been doing in the by-elections, as they'll continue to be doing in Cederberg, as they will do in the Southern Cape, as they will do in the Overberg. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I thank you very much, honourable members. I now call on Honourable Minister Schäfer. One minute, Honourable Minister. 1 minute, we can't hear you.
Is that better? Okay, I trust my time starting again. Thank you. Deputy Speaker, Cabinet colleagues, members of this House and our guests. Yesterday, the Premier gave an inspirational address highlighting the differences between a government that works and a government that talks. He spoke a lot about leading from the front, and lead from the front we have. Earlier this week, I had the privilege of greeting some of our youngest learners as they arrived for grade R and grade 1 at schools in Mitchell's Plain. It was difficult in some ways, no hugging allowed, and parents had to wait outside the gates whilst some of their children anxiously ventured into their new schools. But I was extremely impressed by the measures that had been put in place in our schools, and our teachers and principals deserve high praise for their preparations on the first day of school to set our learners' and parents' minds at rest. Because we have a capable, caring government, they can rest assured that their children will benefit from the opportunities that we give them in the Western Cape, which will be crucial in setting them on a path that will provide them with the best possible opportunities to live a fulfilled life. The COVID-19 battle the Premier referred to has affected education probably more than many. Being leaders in government is difficult, and during a global pandemic, even more so. It requires decisive leadership and clear, consistent communication. It also requires calming of people's anxieties, not stoking them. And the only government where this is evident in South Africa is in the Western Cape, as there is a complete vacuum everywhere else. Opening schools during a pandemic was never going to be easy. Complex decisions had to be made, and I'm proud to say that as the Western Cape government, we made them on the basis of the law, health experts' advice, and in the best interests of our residents, not on the basis of fake hysterical messages sent to communities to instill fear in already anxious people. And the data we have show that the measures we relied on were effective in limiting the spread of the virus in schools. 81% of our schools have reported fewer than 5 cases each at their school, with a quarter having reported no cases at all. The number of cases mirrored infections in the community. But of course, we have lost 104 of our teachers and 35 of our staff, and we mourn each one of them. We also want our teachers to be able to receive the vaccine as soon as possible, long before national cabinet ministers, or provincial for that matter. Another area where emotions run high, and which resurface, of course, with predictable regularity just before each election, is that of school closures. So it was unsurprising to see Member Side parading around Graafwater this week, trying to whip up people's emotions regarding the repurposing of Graafwater High School for a desperately needed special needs school and school of skills. But as much as we are used to opportunistic politicians trying to be relevant by manipulating poor and vulnerable people, when it is done by telling blatant lies and using racist rhetoric, it is unacceptable, even for ANC politicians. Some facts about Graafwater are as following. 1. Without the Graafwater Special School, learners with special needs would have to travel at least 128 kilometers to school, if they could find a space, because special needs schools are heavily oversubscribed. Secondly, most of the learners who previously attended the high school were not actually from Graafwater itself and could be accommodated at alternative schools with our learner transport provided. But never want to miss an opportunity to divide and stoke dissension, Member Side made a few choice statements.
Honourable
which I will
MEC able to take a
highlight
question.
and contrast them with the facts. No, I won't. Firstly,
just on 1 minute on
But you must wait for the
Please,
Deputy Speaker to ask you if you won't.
Yeah, Honourable Member, can I please ask that you put your hand up on the screen so we can see that rather than interjecting as such? We've just said no interjections.
But I'm sitting in the chamber,
the Minister,
Deputy Speaker. There's no screen
okay,
on
I'm
which
not
I can
looking at the
put my
chat,
hand up.
I'm looking at the hands to come up, and that's the important part. The Minister has clearly indicated she will not take a question. She's busy with her speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Deputy Speaker, on a point of order, you cannot expect me to put my hand up on a chat when I'm sitting in the chamber.
Fully understand. Apologies, I understand that, but I would have assumed that someone would have let me know. Thank you.
May I continue, Deputy Speaker? Thank you. So Member Side made a few choice statements, which I'm going to highlight and contrast them with the actual facts. He said, in typical ANC fashion, this would never happen in a white community. Fact, maximizing scarce resources and providing for the needs of the most vulnerable will happen in any community under a DA government. He said there was no public participation. The WCD tried tricks. Fact, public hearings were held on the 20th of August 2019 at Graafwater High School and the 21st of August 2019 at Lamberts Bay Primary School. For the Graafwater High School meeting, members of the community refused to sign the attendance list, but it is captured in the minutes, as is the contribution of a Mr. Franklin Adams and another person. How's that for tricks? Also on record is a petition dated 22nd of May 2019, written submissions from community members as well as attendance registers for meetings with parents from Graafwater on 16 May 2019 and Lamberts Bay on 20th of May 2019. He then said the Premier is going to lie to the public on Wednesday. And Debbie herself hasn't got the decency to even call me MEC, has kept this issue under wraps, and they lied to us. Fact, no, we did not. Next, he said in 2019, as a result of public pressure, many schools did not have to close. This is how they manipulate communities. Fact, of the 17 schools that were the subject of a court action, all but one were confirmed to have been valid closures of schools by the Supreme Court of Appeal. So exactly one school did not have to close because of a procedural issue. But the member wants to support another court action, wasting more of our scarce resources that we so desperately need for delivering services. He then said, this matter is now in Debbie Schaefer's name. Fact, what was in my name was actually my title as an office bearer of this government on an interdict application to stop people who were threatening the school and learner transport with violence on Monday. One of the prime protagonists being who Member Side refers to as Honourable Comrade Franklin Adams. This Adams is the same person who was a councillor in Stellenbosch, was fired and put up again by his party and is again a councillor in Stellenbosch. He was arrested for assaulting police officers, accused of assaulting a WCED official, and the main instigator behind the violent threats to the school. The same person who assaulted a 70-year-old frail petite woman councillor in Stellenbosch, a real pillar of the community and proudly supported by the ANC. This is exactly the kind of leadership we do not need, divisive rather than decisive, looking for relevance in all the wrong places. The fact is that there is nothing wrong with closing schools. It is part of good government when circumstances change. If the ANC exercised some of it, hundreds of half-empty schools in the Eastern Cape would have been closed by now, saving money we desperately need because of the flagrant theft by the ANC. But they continue with populist tactics because they are too scared to lose any more support. Well, I think it's time they jumped off the fiscal cliff they have brought us to so that we can rescue our country for the millions of people who deserve better. While the ANC brings us lockdown, lies and load shedding, the DA-run Western Cape is bringing leadership and hope. When Minister Lindiwe Zulu was making videos about her terrible plight of not being able to go shopping, we stood on principle to demand that ECD centres reopen for desperate parents and owners who were going bankrupt. When SASA, the organisation responsible for caring for the most vulnerable, closed its offices during lockdown, leaving millions with no support, our Department of Social Development distributed and coordinated the distribution of food aid. Premier spoke about the 1.6 million meals that we as the Education Department fed to desperate children during lockdown. And it was the ANC that had to eat their words when a court order compelled them to do the same after the National Minister's instruction not to feed, as a result of which we could not use the NSNP funding. In education, our team has been truly inspirational in its resilience. To assist parents and learners, we developed weekly lesson plans detailing exactly what concepts must be covered to keep up with the curriculum. Our e-portal is a national treasure, with over a quarter of our users coming from outside the Western Cape, leading from the front. During lockdown, we increased the number of resources available on the e-portal. Note, during lockdown, from 14,500 to 29,681, and the free resources tripled to 23,461. We have seen over 2 million individual downloads of resources. The number of users has increased by 25%, and the percentage of returning users has more than doubled. Our teachers needed to quickly improve their skills in remote learning, so we have a self-paced online learning course to assist. Our team also produced downloadable guides for getting started on 5 different platforms that can be used for remote teaching. And now that we need to implement a catch-up plan for the curriculum, the Western Cape is again leading the way in connecting remotely and safely to teachers to work through the adjusted teaching plans. Over the last week or two, for the revised Term 1 curriculum, 29,000 teachers connected to online sessions this week. Our Schools Evaluation Authority, which has cost extremely little for the value it's already given us, is unique to the Western Cape because we use our concurrent legislative competency, and of course because the ANC and their allies are opposed to anything that enhances transparency and accountability. They didn't simply put up shut up shop like Home Affairs and SASA, but they refocused their work to evaluate the responses of our schools and the psychosocial impacts of COVID-19 on staff and learners. And given the few people they have there, their work is phenomenal. The Education Department is, of course, integral to economic growth. A quality education enables people to make a meaningful contribution to the state, both in the skills they contribute and the taxes they pay. So it is vital that we create opportunities for all our learners, and why our emphasis on STEAMAC is so important. That is also why our special schools and schools of skill are so important, like the one in Kraftwater that Honourable Said is trying to close, because we actually care about all our learners, and we want them to all have the best opportunities we can offer. We are also leading the way in the education sector nationally on the green agenda. We have now approved subsidies for schools to acquire the smart water meters to reduce their water consumption, and a number of our schools are now using solar energy, and other provinces are now starting also to look at that option. We're also working with the University of Stellenbosch on other electricity saving methods. And the time is too short for everything that we are doing, but I have to say our team has done us proud, because our government cares for the people of our province, and we will never give up on them, even when the National ANC government does. If I have a bit of time, I want to just address some of the issues raised by other speakers. Brian Isaacs, he had multiple opportunities to overturn his dismissal. He's failed in every one of them, and the way he's behaving shows that the decision was completely and utterly justified. People need to decide whether they want to be professional educators or whether they want to be politicians. They can't be both. As far as the school evaluation, I've already said they have about 4 people evaluating. They've done the most phenomenal work, far more than the national NEDU, which has achieved absolutely nothing and is now really quite dysfunctional. The Brackenfell report is not hidden. It is being actually applied for by way of a prior request by the ANC, who did in fact follow the process, unlike the EFF, who to this date still hasn't done so. And they are welcome to do so, but it has already been published by the ANC in the statement after they received it from the prior application. As far as principals' appointments, I'm not sure on what basis Honourable Said has the ability to make a decision as to who is a competent principal. But principals are actually appointed by the head of department, not SGBs. SGBs nominate and interview and make recommendations. And our HOD has been extremely diligent in ensuring that he is satisfied with the candidates for principals, because it's been shown time and time and time again that if you have a good principal in the school, that school thrives, and if you don't, exactly the opposite happens. And if you can't have a good principal in the school and they are appointed, it is extremely difficult to then remove them from that position. So I have not got the details of that particular school, but I have absolute confidence in my HOD.
Thank you.
Thank you
Minister.
very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Schaefer. I now call on Honourable Mackenzie to do the final wrap-up. Thank you.
Yeah. Honourable members and Honourable Premier, thank you for giving me the opportunity to finish this debate today. I first of all want to thank Dr. Bali and his team for taking us through to Genadendal the last few days. Thank you for your time and your effort. Mrs. Maria Hector, who's also here, who's a board member of the Genadendal Museum Mission, and Ms. Judith Bali, thank you very much for taking us to the history of this beautiful town. And it's actually, honourable members, I have to say, it was quite embarrassing for a member of this House, Honourable Win Vogel, to say we behave like tourists in a foreign town. We should encourage tourism. And as members of this Parliament in the Western Cape, given the state of the pandemic, we should be going more to these small towns and seeing what our country has to offer. Honourable Premier, yesterday you delivered the State of the Province address outlining how the Western Cape is leading from the front to deliver jobs, safety and dignity for the people of this province. And somebody said earlier on, you can be present, but you cannot hear. And it's clear some of the members in this House didn't hear. It was very interesting because I did listen. And I want to thank Member Dugmore for bringing up the matter of workers' rights. It would be great if Honourable Dugmore were to apply and practice what he preached. Because he rightfully raised the issue of farm workers' rights, the workers of government officials, and the dignity of workers. But Honourable Dugmore failed to mention a court ruling last week. A court ruling by the CCMA, of which the ANC caucus, of which he is the leader of, illegally fired 9 workers. And the CCMA ordered them to reinstate those workers to the tune of 1.2 million rand. So boer blink on a stink. What a hypocritical statement to make. That is what the CCMA ruling said. In fact, what did the CCMA, those were the findings that the ruling made. It was your party that gave those workers the boot or before New Year's Day on the 31st of December. Imagine being fired on the 31st of December. What a black Christmas, a bleak Christmas for black workers to have by a party that purport to fight for the rights of black people. Boer blink on a stink, actually, Honourable Premier, as boer stink en on a stink. That is the ANC. Hulle stink van kop tot toon. Die hele liggaam stink. Honourable members, what is more hypocritical is that the member Dugmore stood up here and he said, and I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to give that particular part any ammunition, but he referred to the city of Cape Town, the most well-governed city in the country. Yet he failed to mention this SIU report. In fact, on page 38, when I read that report, which I have to say the ANC didn't bother to read their own report, because in that report, Honourable Dugmore, their spokesperson, of which Member Dugmore is the leader of the caucus, said they studied the report, but nowhere in the report did it mention Matsikama. But in that report, Member Dugmore, if they did bother, Honourable Premier, to study the report on page 38, the SIU clearly state that they were withholding the funding or instructed the municipality to withhold the funding. So they issue a statement which was clearly in true ANC style. They didn't bother reading it, which shows exactly a municipality where they govern, corruption take place, versus a municipality where we govern. The SIU, by the way, made 3 key findings, and I'm going to give it for the reference of Member Dugmore. They made 3 key findings. Of the Department of the Premier, there was no corruption. On the completed investigation on the Department of Education, led by, ably by Minister Schaefer, there was no corruption. Of the Department of Health, there was no corruption. Out of the 13 billion of the complete, I think it was 3.2 billion, there was 0 corruption. But in all the other 8 provinces governed by the ANC, There's further requests for information. In fact, one of them was so damning, the investigators said they couldn't find any information on the spending of PPE corruption. That is the individuals that the most competent government in the country is supposed to get advice from. Unbelievable. Honorable members, we heard from Honorable Said, spoke earlier on, and we heard quite a lot that was said, which is actually a whole lot of nothing. Because as Member Safer said, Honorable Khali and his company, the National Minister of Education, they wanted to stop the feeding of millions of children. A court had to order them. A court, not their conscience, not doing the right thing. A court had to order them to feed millions of destitute children in the country. Now that is despicable. Hulle stink van kop tot toon. In fact, we should just rename the ANC from the ANC to the AWS. Alles wat stink. Hulle stink heeltemal. The Honorable Salid went further, and he's talking about allocating funding to this from national government. Now that is the problem with the ANC. It is not your money. That's why they keep stealing, because in their mind, it is their money. It is taxpayers' money. So when you do a direct funding from national to a clinic in Genadendal, it is still taxpayers' money. Because they operate from this premise, that is their money, they can steal the way they want to. And that is exactly the problem we face in this country. Honorable Smith, you know, it's just amazing how people talk and sometimes they don't refer to the facts. Under the leadership of the Department of Agriculture, and I'm going to name a specific case as highlighted this morning in National Parliament. When it comes to farming and farming communities, the DA actually do land and agricultural reform. What we found as of this morning, Honorable Dagmar, and 4 of your members spoke, Honorable Van Vogel, Honorable Dagmar, Honorable Smith, Honorable Khalid, said nothing about what's currently happening in the Western Cape, where a member of the ANC, an ANC convener, nonetheless, Mr. Mzimododa Kalako, has taken a farm meant for a colored farm, if I can put it that way. They've taken the ANC convener in the Western Cape, a member of parliament of the ANC. Boer blink onder stink, boer stink onder stink. Die ANC stink amal. They never said anything about one of their own members. A member supposed to be convened the ANC to rebuild the ANC has taken a farm from a colored person in the Western Cape. Boer blink onder stink, boer stink onder stink. Die AWS, die hele liggaam stink. Honorable Member, now if you come to a very serious matter, which is actually sadly that Member Dagmar didn't raise. Last week I was watching the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, the Zondo Commission, as it famously known it. And something that shocked me to the core. We knew about it. We had suspicions about it, that the ANC was funded by the state security. Confirmed by the Acting Director General of State Security, that the ANC, and to quote him directly, Member Dagmar, I don't want to misquote him, to quote him directly, the ANC, there was a project to boost the fortunes of the ANC. Now, these are the questions we should ask in this House. And Member Dagmar should actually do a statement in this House. How much money did they receive from the state security? Where is the money that they received from the state security? And which other NGOs did the ANC fund in the Western Cape to either destabilize the ANC, because the DA, because the only way the ANC can boost their fortunes if they destabilize the DA. And that is a question. In fact, Honorable PMA, we should just call for the disbandment of the ANC in the Western Cape, because that is what they're busy with. They're busy destabilizing the province. And that is quite sad. And I'm not surprised, actually, that another political party that is not so good received a cabinet position. So there are more questions to ask, Honorable Premier. Did they also get some of that money from state security? Because the states know. Honorable Aaron says, no, we will hasten to believe you at the moment Honorable Delil resigned. But for now, we can only say until such time as there's reasons given why Honorable Delil is in cabinet, which none of us can give a credible reason, because she didn't brought any votes. It could only be that the state security money went much further than the ANC. And not to yourself, Mr. Heron, but perhaps to the party. Honorable members, there's another matter, which is actually also far more deeper. And I have to say, Honorable Premier, sometimes some of these things is actually unbelievable. It's unbelievably true, the level of corruption that has gone out in this country under the ANC. We have to say, in Laingsburg, Member Dagmar, and we talk about PPE, SI, you funding Mr. Mike Gous. He created a position for his daughter that was not on the organogram. Die pos bestaan nie eens nie. They just created. That is corruption led by the ANC. Hulle ryk slegter soos muisonne. Boostink, onderstink? Nee, Mr. Dagmo, ANC is boostink en onderstink. The SIU also, by the way, Member Dagmo, you would know, currently investigating the same municipality for SIU corruption, PPE corruption. Boostink, onderstink. That is the ANC, Member Dagmo, and that is quite sad. Honorable Smith, and you know, again, when it comes to facts in this parliament, sometimes we have to fact check what these members say, because when you stink van bo tot onder, alles wat daar deurkom, stink. If you look at some of the comments that he made earlier on, and I'm going to read the facts verbatim. There are currently 99 units that is still to be handed over. There were delays by the municipality in finalizing the beneficiary list, which was restricted by COVID-19 protocols, which the ANC national government keep on declaring a state of disaster. But we all know the only reason they do it because they want to hang on to power, led by the Minister of Local Government, which is actually the Prime Minister. And the second houses already, the first housing handover already happened, Honorable Member. Oh, sorry, you're saying something, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Klego, you mentioned super spreader events, but it wasn't your party that was at Brackenfell? Zero masks, hugging each other, pushing people. It was your party that partook in a super spreader event. In fact, I think I've mentioned it before. We should charge them criminally, Premier, because they partook in that criminal super spreader event, which led to the numbers increasing in December. So, Honorable Member Klego, please speak to your member. When they protest, please wear masks. And there was definitely no social distancing, no hand sanitizing taking place. And it was his member, the same member, Klego. It's so hypocritical. They were the one that criticized you, Premier, when you called for the economy to be opened up. He was one of those standing on the podium. Why is the DA calling for the economy open up? Now they're talking about jobs that lost. Actions have consequences. You close the economy, people are going to lose their jobs. That is how the world works.
1 minute,
Thank you,
Honourable
Member.
Honourable Member, 1 minute. I have a point of order coming from the chambers. Who is Honourable Sayed? What's your point of order?
Honourable Deputy
I hear
Speaker,
you.
we have started new parliamentary year. And I think maybe in keeping with that, Honourable Mackenzie has made the mistake last year. But I think just to show also even, to his colleagues, that he must speak through you, Deputy Speaker, and not directly to the member. He cannot address Honourable Tego directly, even though he wants to cover the issue of racism at Brackenfell, but talking about how the march happened. He must speak through you, Deputy Speaker, and not directly. That's a simple rule. He must check his facts on rules.
Thank you, Honourable Sayed. I've received that. Thank you very much. Honourable Member, please talk to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I could smell Honourable Sayed from here. Van Boostink and Onderstink. I appreciate that. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'd like to honor by thanking the Premier and his cabinet for giving this province hope and continue to address the fears. And we know that a lot of work needs to be done to get our province out of the situation that we are in. The Western Cape government is a caring government. We continue to provide while the ANC steal. And we just saw 2 hours ago, Member Dagmo, in case that you didn't get that smell from the Eastern Cape, the current MEC of Health has been fired. Another MEC fired. She has been fired. But it's not a good thing. She stole from Mandela's funeral. I mean, how pathetic do you have to be to steal from Nelson Mandela's funeral? I mean, that is the quality of people that are in the ANC. Boostink, onderstink, hulle stink van heeltemal. Ek kan nie weer verder sê nie, ek is nog te kwaad. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, honourable members. That concludes the debate on the Premier's State of Province address. Business will now be suspended. Members and guests are invited to enjoy some of the refreshments at the Shifa Hall. Please make your way there. For those that require assistance, shuttles will be available at the entrance to the hall. The Premier's reply to the debate will commence at 1400 hours, that's 2 p.m. The bells will be rung to indicate the resumption of business. The bells will be rung at 13 At 13:55, correct, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much. The House is adjourned.